Sometimes all you need to fight crime is a fancy suit. Sure, superpowers help, but truly the MCU has proven that a powerful suit can stand toe-to-toe with some of the universe's biggest threats. Like, you can be a total goofball, but if you're in a suit that can shrink, then you're suddenly one of the most dangerous people on the planet. So what do you think is the strongest supersuit in the MCU based on power? Well, there's quite a few options out there, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's get into our discussion of power rankings of supersuits right now. Alright, I want to start off with the least powerful suit and then work my way up. So that's why I'm starting with Captain America's stealth suit that we first saw at the beginning of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Look, Captain America doesn't need a suit in order to do the things he does. It doesn't necessarily enhance his ability in any discernible way except for making him a bit more bulletproof thanks to the Kevlar body armor. But even then, I've always been fascinated with whether Steve Rogers could deflect a bullet with his bare skin or not. Like, Falcon and the Winter Soldier showed that super soldiers definitely aren't bulletproof, which means Cap has just been incredibly proficient at deflecting any and all bullets shot in his direction. But on the flip side, he's also taking punches from Thanos like a champ, and that would mean that Thanos is technically not as strong as a bullet. I don't know, strength levels are weird in the MCU, and I'm already off topic. I'm still discussing Cap's stealth suit. The reason this is a powerful suit, albeit the least powerful, but powerful nonetheless, is because of what it allows Captain America to do. Because it's a stealth suit, Cap is able to deploy more tactical and strategic methods of smashing his enemies with a shield than he would in the bright red, white, and blue, which in turn makes him more powerful. Plus, the stealth suit is a massive upgrade from his previous suit, which was the Cap suit from the first Avengers movie, and just a monstrosity to look at, so I think that warrants enough of a spot on the bottom of the most powerful suit list. Plus, we know Cap liked it because he actually dons it again when the group go to attack Farmer Thanos at the start of Endgame. It's such a cool suit. Alright, for a few of these entries, I'm going to combine a few suits that group together well, so coming in near the bottom of the list is just about every Spidey villain suit that we've seen in the MCU. And yes, I am now counting Tobey and Andrew's villains since they're officially in the MCU, which is great for this list. But let's be real, although Spider-Man has some of the best villains, the suits themselves don't always translate to power. Like, sure, the Vulture suit in Homecoming was probably the most powerful for what it needed to do, and it was kinda scary looking, but it was so bulky that of course it was hard to maintain. Then you have Mysterio, who might have the coolest design in the MCU, but the suit itself is just smoke and mirrors. But does that make it more powerful? Does the fact that it effectively pretends to be powerful and tricks almost everyone except the average comic reader make it actually more powerful in the long run? That's tough to say. And then what about the suits of older villains? Forget about them. Like, there's a reason why No Way Home destroyed the traditional Green Goblin suit immediately and just had Willem Dafoe look like his natural self, rather than use the Goblin outfit again. It's because Willem Dafoe is a fantastic actor with a perfect Goblin face. Oh, I know, that's mean. I don't mean to be harsh, but I'm just saying his smile and sinister aura is 10 times better than whatever costume he could wear. Plus, the Green Goblin suit didn't serve much purpose. In fact, the most powerful actual suit might be Paul Giamatti's Rhino suit because of how devastating it looks and how much it amplifies the strength of just one normal dude. Plus, the fact that Andrew remembers fighting that guy more than anyone else, pretty impressive overall. Star-Lord's suit is moderately powerful because it mainly gives him the power of a spacesuit in just his helmet. I won't spend too much time on it because it's not technically a full suit, rather a collection of a very useful helmet, rocket boots, and a whole hodgepodge of gizmos and gadgets, but it's still kinda a suit that allows him to breathe in space. I'm not even sure how that works. Where's the oxygen coming from? I have so many questions. But also, extra points for style, right? Yes, Falcon had a pretty fancy first suit when he was just Falcon, and it allowed him to perform extreme aerial stunts that would definitely make me motion sick. Like, I think the opening of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show is the perfect example of why Falcon is so cool. His wings make him the best flyer in the MCU, and it doesn't even seem close, right? Plus, the suit comes with Red Wing, which is one of the most helpful little gadgets in any hero's arsenal. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I like his Falcon suit more than his Captain America suit. Because yes, the new Cap suit should be more powerful now that it's completely made of vibranium and bulletproof and combines Falcon and Captain America aesthetics, but if you're making a bulletproof suit, can you please cover the very top of your head since, you know, that's probably your most vulnerable part? Just a thought. It really helps when your best friend is a genius billionaire playboy philanthropist. Rhodey's journey to War Machine is kind of funny when you think about it. He only hopped in the War Machine suit when he saw Tony making a fool of himself, then decided he was going to keep the suit and pilot it himself. The government agreed to let him be the sole occupant of the suit, and he started his military missions around the world. Now, overall, the War Machine suit is just like the Iron Man suit, except with guns on top of guns on top of guns. And I think there's something to be said about how Tony wanted to make Iron Man suits because he didn't want to make military weapons anymore. Then, one of his suits gets decked out with countless weapons and becomes the military's top weapon? I mean, good thing it's his friend, I guess? Anyway, War Machine is who you call if you need cavalry. If you need something to explode, you call War Machine. And while it could have used an emergency parachute system during Civil War, it's still a pretty durable suit. And here's the big question. What's going to happen to the War Machine suit now? I always figured that Tony was the one upgrading and reinforcing the War Machine suit for Rhodey. But now that Tony is gone and Rhodey is the star of the upcoming Armor Wars, what's the deal? Does Rhodey have to find a way to fix the suit himself if it gets damaged, or does he have to find someone else to repair it? In my mind, the perfect setup would be if Riri Williams is introduced in Armor Wars, then Rhodey can be her superhero mentor while Riri repairs the War Machine suit for him. That sounds like a win-win, right? Sometimes a powerful suit just means containing a powerful hero. For this entry, I'm doing something a bit different. It's been said that Captain Marvel is one of the most powerful heroes in the universe. She's so powerful that she had to be off-planet for most of Endgame protecting the rest of the galaxy, because if she was involved from the start of the final battle against Thanos, then the fight probably would have been over much quicker. That's the overall problem with massively strong and powerful heroes in the long run, but although I would argue we haven't really seen the full extent of Captain Marvel's powers that make her one of the most powerful heroes ever, unless you count her battle with Thor in that What If episode, we still know she can pack one heck of a punch. Watching her plow through Ronin's forces at the end of her movie and then watching her pop Thanos' ship like a balloon in Endgame proves that she's a true force to be reckoned with. And someone like her doesn't necessarily need any type of suit in order to help her out, but I will say the Captain Marvel suit is an incredibly powerful suit because of its durability. Again, did you see her just use her power to destroy those massive ships? How is that suit so durable? It doesn't burn up in space or get damaged, but rather keeps its form, all while being able to change colors at a moment's notice. That's fun. Those Star Force uniforms are amazing. Alright, this is another combo because both Ant-Man and the Wasp have their name in a superhero movie, and the suits are relatively the same, minus a few key upgrades. Obviously, the Wasp suit is better than the Ant-Man suit, so let's start with Ant-Man. I don't think the first few Ant-Man appearances really highlights just how incredible the Ant-Man suit is. In terms of power and function, it immediately makes whoever is wearing it practically the most dangerous person in the world. Like in an Iron Man suit, you kind of need to know how to use it properly and how to activate its complicated features in order to fly and blast. But really, for the Ant-Man suit, if you know how to push a button, you can operate it with relative ease. Yes, Scott Lang is a master thief and has a mechanical engineering degree, but really, has any of those things come in handy for him while wearing the suit? Yes, he's made some small adjustments himself, but Scott is still an overall goofy guy and an average Joe. The suit allows him to sneak almost anywhere and be a major fighting threat thanks to his strength level while being the size of an ant. It's truly incredible. Plus, you add in his ability to become Giant Man, and in the right circumstances, Ant-Man is almost impossible to beat. But then you have the Wasp suit, which adds more tactical and offensive upgrades to the suits like wings and blasters that make Hope a very powerful weapon. Like, honestly, she could probably beat Scott in a fight 9 times out of 10. So again, the suits embedded with Pym particles are incredibly powerful. I mean, just look at the What If episode where Hank Pym turns evil. He successfully uses the Ant-Man Yellow Jacket suit to wipe out almost all the Avengers with relative ease. That's scary. The MCU did a great job with teasing us with the Iron Spider. Yes, Peter Parker's Iron Man-esque suit in Civil War and in Homecoming was a lot of fun in the way that it blended traditional Spider-Man features in a fancy Iron Man suit, but the ending of Homecoming saw Tony present Peter with the Iron Spider suit and a spot on the Avengers, only for Peter to turn it down and keep his feet on the ground for a bit longer. But we didn't have to wait very long to see the Iron Spider in action. Thanos and his goons soon came knocking, and when the Earthbound fight quickly became a spacebound fight, Tony had to deploy the the Iron Spider in order to save Peter's life. And this part I've always had trouble with. Peter is supposed to be a smart kid, but his reaction to him losing oxygen as they go into space is more like, hey, wait a minute, Mr. Stark, what's happening? Which, sure, you could chalk up to adrenaline or Peter's sole determination to save the wizard, but Peter should be a bit smarter than that, don't you think? But I guess it doesn't matter because it gives us the Iron Spider suit. It's such a cheer-worthy and awesome moment as the Iron Spider wraps around Peter's normal suit and brings him even closer to the Iron Man look. This suit is just overall helpful. It has almost all the upgrades of the regular Spider-Man suits, but comes with a fancy set of spider legs and is way more durable with its nanotechnology. Like, it successfully neutralized Doc Ock's arms by infecting it with nanotechnology and taking control, which is something I didn't even know it could do. Does that work with all machines? That's something we probably will never know now, since the end of No Way Home sees Peter embrace a more traditional homemade costume, which implies that he's done with the Iron Spider. But my thing is, Peter, do not get cold with your spider powers. At least wear the Iron Spider suit through winter in New York, and switch over to more traditional garb when the sun's out, right? Maybe that's just me. The Black Panther suit is amazing. Well, at least the second one was. The first version that we saw in Captain America Civil War was an awesome looking suit, but didn't have the powers and the upgrades the second one had. Which is fine. I mean, T'Challa by himself had the power of the Black Panther, making him fast, strong, and agile, so he didn't need a super suit to make him more powerful. That first suit mainly served two purposes. The first was to make him absolutely bulletproof and practically damage-proof to just about anything, except for Black Widow's stingers for some reason. The second purpose was to both symbolize the Panther status and to be a little stealthy and hidden when needed, which perfectly encapsulates Wakanda overall. But it's really the second suit that earned such a high position on this list of most powerful suits. When T'Challa returned to Wakanda after Civil War, he found Shuri had perfected a brand new type of suit that wasn't just a heavy bulletproof suit of armor, but rather accentuated T'Challa's abilities and made them better. From the first instance of nanotechnology in a main superhero suit, which made T'Challa always be able to carry the Black Panther suit with him without any problem, to the boots that made him silent when he ran around, to the harnessing of kinetic energy that allowed him to absorb all the force that was dealt at him and then redirect it in one massive attack, the new suit is one of the most powerful in the MCU. It's such a tragedy that we lost Chadwick Boseman at such a young age, and we won't get to see him go through all the suit upgrades that would have inevitably happened with each passing movie. It's still a little unclear what the future of the Black Panther mantle holds, so we'll have to see how the suit progresses over time. Of course, Iron Man has the most powerful suits. Like, if this was truly a ranking of most powerful suits in the MCU, this list would have Iron Man suits all over it. But I wanted to be fair and spread the love a bit, which is why I decided to group all of the Iron Man suits into one massive entry. There's just so much power behind almost every one of Tony's suits. Look at his very first one, which he managed to make in a cave in Afghanistan using limited resources. That was still able to get 1 out of 2 people out safely, stop an oncoming swarm of bad guys, and then fly away. Sure, the flight didn't get very far, but that's still a tremendous first attempt. And then you know what they say, once you build a giant robot suit, you can't stop building giant robot suits. Tony was hooked, and thus Iron Man was officially born. And with each passing upgrade, Tony's suits got more powerful. It felt like whenever there was a flaw with one suit, the next suit would just have an upgrade for it. Sure, there was a time during Iron Man 3 when he was making so many Iron Man suits that it seemed like the structural integrity was flawed, with the suits falling apart and being destroyed relatively easily, but they eventually got even more powerful. Of course, his most powerful suit was his final suit, the Mark 85 that we saw in Endgame. And the incredible thing about this is that in Infinity War, the suit he was wearing was the Mark 50, which means during that 5-year period where he was presumably taking it easy, he made 35 new upgrades to the suit. A tinkerer has got to tinker, I suppose. So this final suit had the all-powerful nanotechnology, which yes, started to move into basically a magic type of science where all Tony had to do was think about a weapon, or a repulsor blast, or anything, and the nanotech would make it, which is a bit of a cop-out when you think of it, but it's still so much fun to see on screen. Having a final suit that takes all the best things about every previous Iron Man suit and combines them into one final armor that's capable of housing the Infinity Stones and allowing a mortal man to snap his fingers without being instantly obliterated is a major accomplishment. Do you think if Tony had 10 more years and he got to Mark 200 or something, he would have survived his final snap? I think so.
And what's up with the costume? Is that a metallic fiber?
Everyone knows the suit is the most important element for any superhero. You know, minus the powers and all that. But a good superhero suit makes a statement and really sets you apart from the hundreds of other heroes you see running around out there. A lot of superheroes go through a bunch of costume changes over time, but today I wanted to specifically highlight our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man's costumes over the course of his long career. Which suit was the most powerful, and what suit probably could have used a redesign? Well, let's get into my totally official, not at all biased ranking right now.
This is something else.
So Spider-Man has been around for so long that it's allowed for a bunch of different interpretations and variations, so I wanted to start off this list with a fun one. Back in 2003, Marvel Comics published an 8-issue limited series called Marvel 1602. And no, that's not a universe designation number like 616, but rather it's referring to the year it's set. That's right, the Avengers went Elizabethan, y'all. All your favorite characters like the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and Doctor Doom all appeared in this miniseries written by the legendary Neil Gaiman. Spider-Man appeared as well, and his suit was as goofy as you'd expect. It's bright and colorful, but still has a bit of Shakespearean flair to it. Like, it's actually a really cool idea. Spider-Man is a character who oftentimes likes to draw attention to himself to disorient his enemies, so putting him in a bright suit during Elizabethan times actually fits pretty well with the character. And while it may match his acrobatic style, it's definitely not as strong as any other suit on this list. I mean, it was made in the 1600s. What do you expect? If you like this idea, you'll be happy to know that after Marvel 1602 was so popular, one of the sequel series was Spider-Man 1602 and gave us new iterations of all of Spidey's most famous rogues. Too bad this version of Peter didn't get to stick around for long. In the lead up to Spider-Verse, the villainous Morlun showed up and dispatched him with relative ease. Maybe a better suit would have helped. One thing that I appreciated about Captain America Civil War and part of Spider-Man Homecoming is how it gave us a realistic suit that a poor teenager would craft together. Sure, it looks a little wonky, but that's the point. Remember how in the original Sam Raimi trilogy, Peter Parker had that ugly suit, but then was so devastated after his uncle's demise that he suddenly became the world's greatest graphic designer and somehow learned to just sew better? Wild. The homemade suit in the MCU is simple but extremely effective. It doesn't have the bells and whistles of all the other suits on this list, but it allows Peter to stay disguised to protect his identity, makes him colorful enough to look like a superhero, which is probably what Peter was going for, and has enough upgrades like his eye goggles and web shooters to make sure he can effectively fight crime. And while the homemade suit doesn't have any fancy upgrades or powers, what it does do is make Peter Parker rely on his own ability rather than the ability of the suit. Sure, all the suits we'll talk about later are technological marvels, but a lot of them feel closer to an Iron Man suit rather than a Spider-Man suit, and I like it when the character is stripped down to the basics. It also makes cosplaying as this character much less expensive. Sometimes you just can't beat the classics. Although Spider-Man's suit has gone through a ton of evolutions and been bombarded with fancy new upgrades and styles depending on the situation, it's still Spidey's classic suit that helped us all fall in love with the character in the first place. It's pretty iconic, but also straightforward. Most of the time, the classic suit is just made of spandex or something similar, and has red gloves, boots, a belt for web cartridges, and Spidey trackers, plus the mask. Man, yeah, Peter's agile and all that, but that suit does not sound easy to put on. If you're being mugged and Peter Parker is nearby, you just have to hope he's already in his costume or else you might be in trouble. Usually, the biggest deviation over the years to the classic suit is the size of the spider that's on his chest. Sometimes it's itsy bitsy, other times it's massive. But okay guys, here's the biggest question to ask about the classic suit. How do we feel about the webbed wings underneath the arms? I know that they're an essential part of the hero's history, but I always thought they dragged the costume down a bit, but maybe that's just me. Miles Morales started as a side character, but since his debut, he's only grown more and more popular. Like, he was so well liked that when the Ultimate Universe was wiped out, it was decided that Miles would merge over to our main universe and become a major player. He's also the lead for the excellent Into the Spider-Verse movie, which I personally think stands as the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time. But let's talk about his suit. The color scheme is now black and red, rather than bright red and blue, which fits more with Morales' character as he's less in your face place than Peter Parker's Spidey tends to be. Also, the suit itself was given to him by S.H.I.E.L.D., and while it's not as advanced as a Stark suit, it does come with a powerful set of web shooters that might improve on Peter's original design. And as excited as I am to see Peter Parker in a Spider-Man suit, I just think this Ultimate suit is cooler overall. If your goal was to be a ninja, then you'll ask for the Spider-Man stealth suit this holiday season. This nifty design was originally created by Peter Parker in order to protect himself from Hobgoblin's sonic screams. If you want to get all sciencey, the suit warps light and sound around it, which renders it invisible. It's made from an omni-harmonic mesh that cloaks it and makes it silent. It can also mend itself if it's damaged, which is a pretty cool feature. I like this suit because it's another one that highlights the natural agility and dexterity of Spider-Man. He's supposed to move quickly and quietly, and this type of suit definitely helps him with that. I wonder if the MCU's Peter could borrow some of that Wakandan vibranium technology that makes Black Panther's suit silent while moving around. But the biggest issue with this is that even though this would turn Spidey invisible and keep him hidden from enemies, I don't think the webhead would be able to stay quiet long enough for it to be successful. Comic Spider-Man loves to quip to distract bad guys, while the MCU Spidey can't help acting like a puppy who was just injected with adrenaline. Quiet isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Spider-Man. Spider-Man has such an interesting and diverse rogues gallery that really he should have a different suit for all of them. Each one of his villains usually brings something interesting to the table in terms of power and ability, and Spidey should be ready for all of them. That's why I want to highlight the Electro-proof suit. Man, what if I told you this suit was used to fight Kraven the Hunter? Obviously not. The Electro-proof suit is, of course, for Electro. Whenever Electro breaks out of prison and goes on another rampage, Spider-Man is always sure to bust out this Electro-proof suit, which is really just a rubber-padded version of the original. It helps in that Spidey isn't fried to a crisp when Electro inevitably shocks him. So technically this suit is pretty simple, but it's ranked here because it's an idea that allows Peter to take away the single greatest advantage his enemy has. Like, seriously, Peter should do this with everyone. Oh, the Vulture's broken out of prison again? Let's grab the suit with the jetpack and the parachute. Mysterio is on a rampage? Better grab the suit with a built-in gas mask. Venom is out of jail? Yeah, I don't know how you make a suit to combat him, but good luck though. Do you guys ever have those special moments? You know the ones I'm talking about. You'll be sitting there minding your own business and then suddenly remember how amazing Nicolas Cage's Spider-Man Noir was throughout Into the Spider-Verse? Yeah, me too. Anyway, the Noir suit is a lot of fun. The suit itself and its user heralds from Earth 90214, where Spider-Man Noir is very different from the Spider-Man we've come to know and love. And the reason I included this suit here is because of just how radically different it is compared to any other suit. Like, gone are all the bright colors and gadgets, and they're replaced with black leather and a pair of pistols. Like, it doesn't sound very Spider-Man-y, but hey, that's what happens when you have a character who sometimes lets matches burn down to his fingertips just to feel something. I think there's a certain amount of power in style, and if this was the sole criteria, then this suit would be the best, hands down. Sometimes even the the spider sense. Man, the MCU has really ruined that phrase, hasn't it? Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, right. Sometimes the spider sense just won't cut it. Yes, Peter's spider sense allows him to dodge a lot of bullets and gunfire with relative ease thanks to his spider-like reflexes, but sometimes Peter needs something sturdier. That's where the spider armor comes into play. With a pretty straightforward name, you can guess what this suit is all about. In the comics, when the new enforcers came to New York and started using high-caliber firearms, Peter went to the drawing board and came up with the spider armor. It was developed at Empire State University and was made from a pseudo-metallic compound that allowed Peter to be bulletproof. That must have been a relief to just allow bullets to hit him for once. Of course, you can probably see the big problem here. The spider armor was much heavier than Peter was used to, and that ultimately slowed him down and made him less agile, which again is kind of his whole thing. Man, nothing can ever be easy for Peter Parker, can it? Right off the bat, this isn't your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. This is your mean, ruthless, terrifying Spider-Man. The Spider-Man on Earth 8351 is extremely different from the Spider-Man we're used to. This version is a top Black Ops assassin who works alongside Wolverine. This Spider-Man suit looks rather villainous in its design and is definitely no nonsense. This is a suit that if you see it, it's probably going to be one of the last things you see, you know what I mean? The big difference in this suit is that on top of web shooters shooting webs, they also fire bullets, which automatically makes this version of the webhead incredibly lethal. Like, there's one scene where a villain laughs after cutting Spider-Man's webs, only for Spidey to shoot him in the face. Ouch. You pair this new, dangerous suit with a now uber-serious Peter Parker, and you got yourself one new dangerous threat. You don't necessarily look at Spider-Man's suit and think sleek, but for this one, you might make an exception. This is the Future Foundation suit, and its mostly all-white design with black trim certainly gives it an eye-raising appearance, but the suit itself is quite powerful. It's made from a new generation of unstable molecules and thus comes with a bunch of unique abilities, like being able to self-repair itself if it's damaged. On top of that, the suit can change its appearance in a flash, turning from its all-white design to battle armor or street clothes with just a single thought. That also means that if Peter is ever feeling nostalgic, he can morph the suit into his familiar red and blue design, but also keep all the upgrades the Future Foundation suit comes with. It also has a pretty nifty stealth mode, which makes it even harder to detect. Overall, this is probably one of the best and easiest suits to manage. Can I sign up for the Future Foundation? No? Okay. The Fear Itself crossover in Marvel Comics pitted our favorite Avengers fighting Serpent, an Asgardian fear deity who caused a global panic on Earth while trying to reclaim the Asgardian throne that he felt his brother Odin stole from him. Classic Odin. Anyways, a fun little detail to come out of this event was a new suit for Spider-Man. When facing an Asgardian deity, a normal spandex suit just wasn't going to cut it. The new suit was created by Tony Stark from the metal Uru, which savvy comic readers know is also what Thor's hammer is made out of. It's light blue in color with glowing web trim, and he sorta looks like he belongs in a neon rave of some sort. Obviously, this was an incredibly sturdy suit, and it was soon blessed by Odin himself. So yeah, although this suit would never hide itself in a crowd and blend in, it's a reliably offensive suit that can go toe-to-toe with Asgardians. I think everyone by now is familiar with the symbiote suit and its relationship with Spider-Man. After Spidey merged with the gooey black substance, he found himself with an incredible new suit that was a considerable upgrade to what came before. Besides a sleeker, all-black look, Peter found himself stronger, faster, and more durable with this new suit. Also, it produced its own webbing, which was probably a huge relief on Peter's time and peace of mind. You know how many nights he probably sat up concocting new webbing for his web shooters? You know how many times he was fighting a villain only to discover he was out of web cartridges? This suit solved both those problems. And they both lived happily ever after. Or, okay fine, we know that's not what happened. Eventually, the suit formed an unhealthy attachment to Peter, there was a huge fight involved, and yada yada yada, we got to see Tom Hardy sit in a giant lobster tank. Yes, even in the future, there will still be a Spider-Man. Miguel O'Hara is the titular Spider-Man from the year 2099, and as you'd expect from a futuristic suit, it has significant upgrades. But before mentioning those, can I just read the room and see what you guys think of the coloring and design for Miguel's costume? It certainly makes an impact and stands out, all while basically switching the primary and secondary colors of red and blue. On top of being extremely durable, it also has powerful GPS and infrared sensors, boot jets, hologram projectors, and the ability to shoot explosives out of the web cartridges. Plus, it can glide through the air thanks to an airfoil cape that emits a stream of anti-gravity particles. What do you get when you put Doc Ock's mind in Peter Parker's body? The superior Spider-Man, that's what. And you would think that Doc Ock would immediately use this opportunity to go on a villain spree, but that's not what happened. The villain wanted to prove he was an even better Spider-Man than Peter Parker and turned over a new leaf. And while Peter liked to usually rely on his own agility and dexterity to win fights, Doc Ock's Spider-Man leaned into the tech side of things, making a suit that combined the multi-limbed aesthetic Otto was used to with powerful upgrades like stronger webbing, and gloves and boots with retractable talons. Peter Parker might always be the better Spider-Man, but it's hard to argue that Doc Ock made the better Spidey suit. The final two will be MCU suits, and it's mainly because they took Stark technology and put them in a Spidey suit, which in the MCU made them the most powerful suits ever. Like, Tony Stark recruited Peter Parker to help him fight Captain America, but couldn't have his new protege show up in a baggy sweatshirt. So at some point in time, probably overnight because that's when Tony does his best work, he designed a Spider-Man suit that looked a lot like a plain Spider-Man suit, but enhanced it with a ton of new upgrades and features. Like, it had gadgets that allowed Peter to to shoot different types of webs, glider, arm things, a parachute, and even an advanced AI system that could control his suit for him. Sure, there was also an insta-kill mode, which is a little questionable given that Peter is just a teen, but it just highlights how powerful this suit was overall. Also, I know that this doesn't really affect the power level of the suit and is more of an aesthetic thing, but I like how Tony took the time to make the eyes expressive. Sure, it's all done with CGI, and there's an argument of how Sam Raimi's more natural suit is better, but it's hard to argue that this first Stark suit is one of the most powerful. Yeah, take everything I said about that last suit, but just make it an even more of an Iron Man suit and call it the Iron Spider. Like, really, the only big difference between the Iron Spider and the first Stark Spidey suit is the giant tentacle arms that make a big difference in any fight. Other than that, you can just assume that it has all the same gadgets, only it's probably more durable and looks even cooler. Like, come on, we now get to say the Iron Spider was in the MCU. How awesome is that? Iron Spider takes the #1 spot hands down. It's insane how powerful some suits can be in the Marvel Universe. Seriously, some suits just reach a level of strength that's nearly incomprehensible. Today, I'm talking about the strongest Marvel suits that our favorite heroes and villains wear during their day job and how they stack up against each other. I promise, this isn't an all Iron Man list, and I've tried to space it out a bit, so let's see how this goes. Let's get started right now. James Rhodes is in an interesting position in the MCU. He's always been a supporting character to Iron Man, but now that Tony Stark is relaxing and annoying every ghost in the afterlife, it's time for Rhodey to step up and take center stage. And with the War Machine armor, he deserves it. The War Machine armor itself is a little more basic than Tony's typical suits, but what it lacks in innovation, it makes up for in big guns. Like, sometimes Iron Man is just an Iron Man, but War Machine is a true War Machine. His guns have guns, and those guns also have little tiny guns on top of it. He's the cavalry you call when you need assistance, and while his suits have changed over the years, he generally keeps it loaded and ready to go when necessary. I'm putting Crimson Dynamo so early on this list mainly because I want the character to factor into the upcoming Armor Wars TV show, and he would pair well with Rhodey given the subject matter of Tony's tech falling into the wrong hands. It's hard to narrow down all of Crimson Dynamo's abilities because there have been a lot of upgrades and users of the same name. I'll specifically highlight Valentin Shatilov, though, because I think he's one of the most interesting wearers of the Crimson Dynamo armor. His version of the armor was an enhanced suit of armor that granted him strength, flight, invulnerability, and came with a powerful fusion caster chest beam that could do some serious damage. Could you imagine a scenario where Crimson Dynamo faces Red Guardian in the MCU? That'd be fun, right? Apocalypse was one of the most disappointing live-action villains in the X-Men movies, which is really saying a lot given the whole list of disappointing villains in that franchise.
Don't you know who I am?
But I think it's important to highlight that in the comics, Apocalypse is not only one of the greatest villains, but he also has an incredible suit of armor. In the comics, his armor was crafted by Celestials, and it added to Apocalypse's already insane set of skills. If there's any villain that didn't need a high-tech suit of armor to make them more powerful, it's definitely Apocalypse. And now with the X-Men soon joining the MCU and the fact that Celestials are becoming a bigger thing, I don't see why the MCU couldn't reboot Apocalypse and give him a comic-accurate suit of armor. Sure, that would be bad for all of our heroes, but good for the audience. Christopher Powell is the cosmic hero known as Darkhawk, and his skill set is fascinating and one I hope to see sometime soon in the MCU. You see, Powell once discovered an amulet that allowed him to be connected to an advanced suit of Raptor armor, and together Powell became the superhero known as Darkhawk. Powell is able to transfer his consciousness into the android and use it to fight bad guys. The armor itself is an ancient piece of tech that has all the standard armor upgrades like strength, speed, durability, flight, self-repair, force fields, as well as being able to summon weapons from the extra-dimensional expanse. So he could pull a unique weapon out of anywhere, which is definitely a unique capability. Move over, Iron Man, because Titanium Man is here. Okay, I think that name is clunky. Yes, Iron Man doesn't exactly make sense anymore since Tony has upgraded way past Iron, but his superhero name still rolls off the tongue rather easily, unlike Titanium Man. But who is this villain? Well, like a lot of Tony Stark's bad guys, Titanium Man is a tech-based character who uses a suit of armor that gives him strength, speed, and durability. Also, he probably sets off the metal detector at every airport, which feels like a major inconvenience. I love suits that are basically built into the hero, and that's why I think Guardian is fascinating. James Hudson, who also has gone by Weapon Alpha, can be considered the Canadian Captain America. He is the founding member and leader of the team known as Alpha Fight, and possesses a whole range of abilities. But let's talk about his suit. His suit originally in the comics was a cybernetically controlled bodysuit that allowed him to fly by directing beams of force toward the ground, as well as gave him all the standard superhero stuff like strength and speed. What's interesting though is that as time went on, Hudson was eventually turned into a cyborg that had his power suit basically built inside of him and made him even more powerful. So I ask you this very important question: would you turn into a cyborg knowing it would make you more powerful? Ironheart hasn't been officially introduced in the MCU yet, but we all expect big things from her since in the comics, she's proven to be a worthy successor to the Iron Man mantle. Riri Williams spends her life looking up toward Tony Stark, and that eventually leads to her being mentored by the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist. She designs her own suit at first, and her first model is powerful and has some interesting abilities, but it's clunky and a little awkward. Once Riri starts working with Tony Stark, she gets a major suit upgrade, which gives her a fun suit that she can do some serious damage with. On top of that, her suit actually comes with the computerized mind of Tony Stark in it. Can you just imagine for a second if RDJ came back to voice a digital version of himself in the Ironheart TV show? That'd be awesome. Hisako Ichiki is a mutant who has a very unique ability that allows her to summon a transparent suit of psionic armor around her in order to fight evildoers, and I think that's enough to warrant a spot on this list. I mean, first of all, the suit never needs to be washed or repaired, which I'm sure is like the #1 thing someone like War Machine is required to do after every battle. No, Ichiki has this psionic armor and is powered by the memory of her ancestors. When focusing, she can make the armor grow bigger, stronger, and unleash a lot more physical damage. We've seen the Destroyer in the MCU almost take out Thor, but in the comics, its history is much more complex and its uses have been way more epic. So the Destroyer is an ancient suit of armor created by Odin that was capable of housing vast amounts of God's energies in order to specifically battle the Celestials. Yes, while the Destroyer sat dormant for many years, the god of mischief Loki eventually found it and tried to use it against Thor. But let's not forget why it was originally created, and I want to highlight one specific instance here. When the Celestials did return and threatened to destroy everything, Odin ended up absorbing most of the Asgardians' energy, and then used that to actually enter the armor to fight in. That's wild. The Godbuster armor is arguably the most powerful suit of armor Tony Stark has ever created, and it's only on the middle of this list because it turned out to be so overpowered that Tony decided to destroy it. It originally came from the virtual reality known as Escape, which Tony Stark developed and subsequently was captured by because, of course he was. While in virtual reality, Tony's brain basically unlocked itself and there were no limitations to the things he could create, which led to the Godbuster armor. It's been called Tony's masterpiece and the ultimate weapon, and Tony used it to defeat the evil AI known as Motherboard. But once he was in the real world, he decided that the suit was too powerful to ever be used again, and decided to destroy it. But I mean, come on. It's a suit of armor that is literally so powerful that it could defeat anything, so of course the writers had to find a way to take it out. I've talked about Black Panther suits in past videos, but one I wanted to highlight here is T'Challa's red Black Panther suit. Or I guess I should just call it the Red Panther suit? Anyway, this suit is a major upgrade compared to his normal suit. It comes with a bunch of fancy sounding stuff like thrice blessed vibranium Danbei boxing cords, which help enhance his martial arts skills, stone from the Wakandan necropolis, which allows him to channel the spirits from all the past Black Panthers, and anti-magic defense protocols. Yeah, you know when a suit does all that, you're nearly unstoppable. The Hulkbuster may not be the strongest suit on this list, but it's one of the most useful. Its specific function is just to provide a good level of defense whenever the Hulk goes on a rampage, which happens way more in the comics than it does in the MCU. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner helped design it in order to make sure the Hulk could be stopped if the worst case scenario happened. We've seen it a few times in action, and it's always a blast to watch Hulk and the Hulkbuster armor throw down, specifically because it shows how even when there's a suit of armor designed to contain the Hulk, it still has trouble, showing how dangerous the Hulk can be. More Hulkbuster in the MCU, please. I was a big fan of the Superior Spider-Man arc because it was interesting to see someone like Otto Octavius try to become a good guy. even if his methods were way more aggressive than Peter's ever were. But Otto's new Spidey suit specifically highlighted everything Peter's suit was missing in terms of attack functionality. A lot of the time, Peter just likes his simple suit because he's a strong enough hero without any additional add-ons. But Otto had a different approach to it. While in Peter's body, he upgraded the suit with specialty add-ons like an advanced AI system, nerve hacking technology, lasers, specialty spider arms, as well as enhanced lenses to help him detect things like certain frequencies and radio waves. It's kind of fun, don't you think? In the MCU, we've seen a ton of amazing robot fights, but we still haven't seen the equivalent of a giant robot fight against a powerful foe Power Rangers style, and that's a big shame. That's why I like the God Killer armor so much. This was a ginormous suit of armor developed by Tony Stark in order to go toe-to-toe with Celestials. It's powered by 8 nuclear reactors, so yeah, you can't just plug it into an outlet and hope it charges overnight like your phone. But as awesome in theory as this suit is, and while it could probably beat almost anyone, it didn't do so well against the Celestials. You know, the things this armor was specifically made to fight. In a funny move, the suit is destroyed almost immediately, which feels like just a huge waste of money and time. The Doom War armor is one I wanted to highlight because its origins and story around it would make for a great basis for Black Panther 2. Basically, the gist is that Dr. Doom and his country of Latveria go to war with Wakanda over their supply of vibranium, and Doom has the upper hand for most of this event. He successfully invades and then makes a suit of armor completely out of vibranium and adds his own signature style to it to help make it do things like control all metal. It's an almost unstoppable suit, and it forces Black Panther to activate a device that renders all the vibranium on Earth inert, and therefore not very powerful. That's a drastic measure, but could you imagine if they could adapt this to the MCU? I like the idea of vibranium being the crux of all of Wakanda, and the new Black Panther having to make a decision to take it off the board for everyone would be harrowing to see. It's clear so far that Iron Man loves to bust things, but I find his Phoenix busting armor to be one of the most fascinating. It was designed by Tony and Hank Pym to battle the Phoenix Force, which we know is one of the strongest cosmic forces in the universe. And guess what? It actually sort of worked. The armor had a massive power disruptor specifically designed to take down the Phoenix Force, and Tony Stark was able to hit it head on. Of course, like most of Tony's ideas and intentions, things went awry. Yes, it did manage to break the Phoenix Force up into different parts, but those parts immediately possessed 5 nearby X-Men and caused even more problems. So, a powerful suit? Absolutely, but maybe it wasn't used in the best way. You'll see as we get near the end of this list, I've chosen a lot of suits of armor that blend the best of both worlds. There's just something about a suit of armor that takes 2 different styles and meshes them together that I think is just so cool. So that's why I want to rank the Iron Spider suit so high. In the comics, it combines Peter Parker's natural strength and abilities with the tech and integrity of an Iron Man suit. Those 2 things together make an almost unstoppable combo, right? Peter doesn't necessarily need a suit to be a hero, but giving him an Iron Spider suit, which enhances his abilities, gives him access to more gadgets, and provides more information, as well as helps things like his agility and defenses, just launches the Iron Spider to one of the best suits of armor ever. Again, it just really helps when the person wearing the suit is already a powerful superhero. One of Tony Stark's most game-changing suits of armor is his Bleeding Edge suit, which fixed that clunky issue of always needing time to step into a suit of armor to fight bad guys. Bleeding Edge is an all-nanotechnology suit which lives directly inside of Tony's body. Upon mental command, the armor can reveal itself and basically take the shape of anything it wants. With this armor, Tony became less of a genius billionaire who needs a suit to beat up bad guys, and more of a literal walking suit of armor who can never be caught defenseless. On top of that, as a fun add-on, the node that controls the Bleeding Edge armor has only made Tony even smarter than he was before, which is wild to think about. Dr. Doom had another suit of armor on here earlier, but the best of his suits has to be the mystical armor. Not only does it highlight Doom's brains, as well as his tendency to rely on magic from time to time, but the way he got this certain all-powerful suit is a little horrifying. In order to get the suit, he had to make a deal where he would sacrifice something he could never replace. He chose a woman named Valeria, who was the only person he ever loved in the past. Sacrificing her, her skin transformed into the leather that holds the armor together, which, gross. Seems like him and Thanos would have a lot to talk about. If Doom showed up in the MCU wearing the leathered skin of his past loved one, that would make him a terrifying enemy for anyone to face. Alright, my final armor that I want to talk about takes the mystical Doom armor one step farther, and nobody even had to be sacrificed for it. Isn't that cool? I'm of course talking about the Sorcerer Supreme armor from the comics that occurred in a what-if story where Tony Stark became the Sorcerer Supreme. So he gets all these magical powers, but also wants to build a suit to go with it. So this armor is created, and it's the perfect blend of technology and magic. Those two things together are probably the two biggest factors in ranking a powerful suit, so when you have the best of both worlds in one place, then yeah, of course this suit is going to rule. Basically, this suit has the Eye of Agamotto embedded in its chest plate and can do things like detect incoming spells, as well as suggest counterspells. If you're a sorcerer, then yeah, why not make yourself even more powerful with a fully functional suit of armor? The reason I like the multiverse is because it not only gives us fun variants of our favorite heroes and villains, but also allows us to see how our universe stacks up in comparison. Today I'm talking about some of the most powerful suits in the whole multiverse. Yes, it does mean a lot of suits from our universe make the cut, but it's interesting to compare those to other suits not from our own world. What is truly the most powerful suit in the multiverse? What makes a powerful suit so awesome? How many times will Iron Man show up on this list? Let's find all that out right now. First things first, let's talk about the Godbuster armor. I mean, that has to be first up on a list of most powerful suits, right? It's like the most powerful creation in existence. Yes, it's one of those items that's so powerful that people chose to destroy it, because then there would be no more conflicts ever. But for that brief time, it was the greatest thing Tony Stark had ever built. So the origins of this suit stem from virtual reality. Tony was hanging out in the metaverse, hanging out in Escape, when the system basically came alive and captured him. Tony, please, for the love of God, watch a movie or something. Never create a virtual reality and stop creating AI because eventually they all turn bad. Anyways, Escape did come with some benefits. While in that environment, Tony's brain shook off all the cobwebs and unlocked its true potential. There was no limitation to what he could create. Did you ever learn that thing about how we only use 10% of our brains? I never knew if that was really true or not, but in this comic and this situation, Tony was able to use all 100% of his big brain, and he created the ultimate weapon. The Godbuster armor defeated the evil AI known as Motherboard and could probably go on to do literally anything it wanted. But once he was in the real world, Tony had his moment of clarity where he deemed the suit to be too powerful to ever have anyone use it and destroyed it. As much as I respect Tony's ending in Endgame, I now imagine him using the stones to snap himself into the ultimate Godbuster suit of armor and using it to kick Thanos' butt. But yeah, for its unlimited potential, this is one of the strongest suits in all of Marvel history. So in the MCU, Celestials are coming / are already here. Phase 4 established that the Earth is just a giant egg that was created to hatch another Celestial once it had enough juice. But thanks to the Eternals, that catastrophe was prevented. At least, sort of. There's still a giant dude sticking out of the Earth that you would think would cause massive tidal shifts in the ocean patterns or whatever, and have everyone on Earth question the meaning of life. But I guess we'll just ignore all of that for now. But what happens if the Celestials deem Earth to be unworthy and come back to step on us? Well, in the comics, that's what the God Killer armor was for. This was a massive suit of armor that I think cost $1 bajillion and was powered by 8 nuclear reactors. Yeah, it was a huge undertaking, and although in theory this suit is the most powerful thing on Earth, it didn't do so well in the actual Celestial fight. Like, don't get me wrong, if Tony used this suit all the time, then villains like the Mandarin or Obadiah Stane probably wouldn't stand a chance, but when it was up against some of the most powerful beings in existence, it broke almost immediately. And yes, given its lifespan, you may object to this being so high on this list, but come on, it's a giant celestial fighting suit of armor. That makes it incredibly powerful. If Tony was still alive, we'd totally get something like this in the MCU. Like, Fury's sword Space would transform into this the next time that Arishem comes to judge us. I think the only thing the MCU is missing so far is a giant robot fight, but maybe one day. So this sorta counts as out in the multiverse since it's a what-if story, but the next thing I want to discuss is the Sorcerer Supreme armor. This is the blend of the technological and the mystical, with Tony Stark becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. So in this story, Stark and Strange were driving together on that fateful night of the car crash, and after Strange lost the use of his hands, Stark became guilt-ridden and obsessed with helping Strange. This led the pair to the Ancient One, and bada bing, bada boom, Tony Stark became the Sorcerer Supreme and Doctor Strange became his slightly bitter butler. But I personally love this combination. The Stark Sorcerer Supreme armor takes the best of both Tony Stark and Stephen Strange and smashes them together. So Tony is this magic-wielding sorcerer in an advanced tech suit. The Eye of Agamotto is embedded in his chest and can sense incoming magical attacks. It even has a feature of suggesting counter spells when necessary. Yeah, this suit is so powerful because it accentuates an already powerful individual. And I love blends of tech and magic together. When done right, it makes for an incredible combination. And I want to build off that last idea for a bit. I've mentioned Iron Man suits for the first 3 entries, so let me turn my attention over to the other tech genius in the Marvel Universe who makes awesome suits and has a good grasp on the mystic arts. That's right, it's Doom time, baby! While the Sorcerer Supreme armor is something that can only happen in a what-if comic in a different universe, the mystical Doom armor is very much in our world. And let me tell you, it's definitely the creepiest thing on this list. I mean, I can safely guarantee that no other suit of armor on this list is made up of human skin. So Doom loves to blend mysticism with tech, and in order to get this armor, he had to make a deal where he would sacrifice something he could never replace. He chose a woman he loved in the past, Valeria, and upon his sacrifice, her skin transformed into the leather that held the armor together. Ew, that's probably worse than Thanos sacrificing Gamora, right? Like, the equivalent of this would be Thanos chucking Gamora off that cliff, and then her mangled body turning into the Soul Stone for Thanos to wear around. Yeah, I don't see any situation where this suit is allowed to be featured in the MCU. Alright, it's tough to choose which Venom symbiote I want to include on this list. And I know what you're saying. CBR voice, aren't you making this list? What does it matter how many you include? You have like 50 Iron Man entries. Spread some love to Venom. Well, Venom 2099 is the one I want to include because I haven't talked about it yet. Yes, the Man in Black storyline gave us that ultra-powerful Enigma Force symbiote Venom, but there's also something really interesting about Venom 2099. And yes, this is totally a suit. It's a living suit, but a suit nonetheless. Anyways, the Venom 2099 is actually Kron Stone, who is the older half-brother of Miguel O'Hara. He goes through a similar arc as Eddie Brock did. Stone was this angry villain who bonded with the Venom symbiote and became a major thorn in Miguel's side. But the whole reason I wanted to mention this one is because of its evolution. In the future, the Venom symbiote evolves, gaining new powers like acid blood and acid saliva. And then it was revealed that the symbiote became more than just a suit and bonded with Stone on a molecular level, giving Venom 2099 the power to shapeshift. And the reason I mentioned this one was because I kind of want to see a similar storyline play out in Venom 3. Come on, having the trilogy end with Eddie Brock and Venom having to bond on a molecular level to beat an unknown threat would be fitting, right? Anyways, Venom 2099 totally rules. I feel like Iron Lad doesn't normally show up on lists like these, but I wanted to include him here. Not only because I think his suit is interesting and powerful, but because Iron Lad should totally be in the MCU. So Iron Lad is Nathaniel Richards, aka a Kang variant. Yeah, the whole time travel thing is complicated, but at his core, he's basically an Iron Man and Kang hybrid. His suit is a neurokinetic armor that's made from a rare synthetic alloy from the 40th century. So you can't just pick it up at your local store. But due to his connection and his genius, he can control the suit subconsciously, and it has all the features that you would expect from a futuristic alternate universe Iron Man suit. I really want to see Iron Lad in the MCU because that would be so interesting to see a Kang variant model himself off of Iron Man and see those ramifications and join the Young Avengers, all of that. Plus, that's easy to make him part of the multiverse, which I think justifies the inclusion of his suit on this list. Apocalypse is one of those unfair villains who is insanely powerful without the suit, but then on top of that has this suit of armor that makes him one of the most dangerous individuals in the galaxy. In the comics, his suit was crafted by Celestials, and it came with all these nifty gizmos and gadgets. I know that they're weaving the mutants in the MCU gradually and revealing that they've probably been on Earth this whole time, but before the Miss Marvel and Namor reveal, I really did want to see a different version of Apocalypse from the multiverse who has just this this unimaginably dangerous suit of power. After the lackluster Age of Apocalypse movie, Apocalypse deserves a second chance. Heck, get Oscar Isaac to play him again and really get weird with the multiverse. Yeah, High Evolutionary has a name that Rocket is definitely going to make fun of in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. His real name is Herbert Wyndham, which is the type of name that drives you to become a supervillain, so no one calls you that anymore. Anyways, I'm including High Evolutionary's suit not only because we're about to get up close and personal with it in live action during Volume 3, but because the suit deserves a special shout out. High Evolutionary is one of the smartest baddies in the universe, and he used his gift with genetics to craft an exoskeleton suit that protects Herbert's body, even from death. Yeah, it has something called the Reconstitution Protocol, where the suit is smart enough to hold fragments of Herbert's genetic code, so if Herbert is ever killed or seriously injured, the suit can rebuild him. Isn't that sort of terrifyingly cool? I think it is. Okay, back to Iron Man for a second, because now's the time for the Phoenix busting armor. This one is a little self-explanatory, no? It was designed by Tony and Hank Pym to battle the incoming Phoenix Force. You know, one of the strongest forces in the universe. Yeah, good luck building a suit of armor against that. I wish I could have been in the room where Hank and Tony talked the design for this. Like, what's your planning process even like? You just sit around and draw big guns on a whiteboard or something? And yeah, this didn't go so great. Although you could technically call the suit a success for the way it broke apart the Phoenix Force, things turned south when the fragments of the Phoenix Force went into 5 nearby X-Men. Huge bummer. Superior Iron Man hails from a different universe that asks the question, what if Tony Stark never had his change of heart? Yeah, he turns into a big ol' villain and is incredibly dangerous. And without that pesky thing called morals or conscience, he's able to do some pretty wicked stuff, all with the help of his specialty suit. It's called the Endosim armor, and it's based off of symbiote biology. It's a liquid metal that hardens as soon as it comes into contact with the user's body and then establishes a psionic bonds between it and the user. It's all the best qualities of a symbiote and Tony's tech without much of its weaknesses, as that universe's Tony fixed one of the symbiote's weaknesses by creating a shield for sonic attacks. Out of all of Tony's suits on this list, this is probably the one I want to see the most in the MCU because it would mean superior Iron Man in the MCU, which is the one thing I'm really hoping we see in the future. Okay, this list has a trend of painting gigantic Iron Man suits as some of the most powerful in the multiverse, so this entry, I'm gonna switch it up and talk about the gigantic Spider-Man suit instead. That's right, it's Leo Pardon. In this alternate universe, Spider-Man is the controller of a massive robot that visited Earth and has the ability to transform from spacecraft to awesome robot guy. This was revealed in the Spider-Geddon storyline, which saw a bunch of different alternate reality Spider-Men team up to fight an ultimate evil. And if you think Spider-Man with the gigantic robot is ridiculous, I'll inform you that this was actually a reference to the Japanese Spider-Man TV show, which featured something similar. You know what people always say, Spider-Man is great and all, but they should really put him in a Power Rangers-esque robot. And guess what? They did. So let's stay on the Spider-Man train for a second and talk about one of the most powerful and most interesting Miles Morales suits. Of course, Miles Morales originally came from a different universe before being so popular that they crossed him over permanently. But his most powerful suit came when he unfortunately encountered Carnage and the evil symbiote infected Miles. The results were arguably much cooler looking than the Venom symbiote infecting Peter Parker. The Miles Morales/Carnage suit unleashed devastating new power, and it took a second for Miles to get it all under control. And when he did, the result was one of the coolest looking symbiote suits around. Yeah, Carnage and Miles Morales are already two powerful characters separately, but combine them and you got something truly special. Okay, one more Doom suit. Now, this Doom War suit isn't as gross or terrifying as his mystical Doom armor, but I think this suit deserves special recognition. The Doom War armor stems from the Doom War comic arc, which sees Doom go to war with Wakanda over their vibranium supply. As soon as Doom is successful in his attack against T'Challa's country, Doom is able to make a suit completely out of vibranium and gives him enhanced abilities like metal control. It's only beatable once Black Panther activates a device that basically depowers all vibranium on Earth. But wouldn't this be wild to see in the MCU? Imagine Black Panther 2 or 3 ending with Wakanda choosing to destroy their vibranium supply so Dr. Doom doesn't reach unstoppable power? That'd be cool. So, in 2013's House of M storyline, we saw Wanda rewrite all of reality to make humans the minority and mutants the dominant individuals on the planet. And I like to think there's a universe out there in the MCU that reflects this. But this means humans are actively plotting a resistance, and that puts Iron Man front and center. That's right, it's my final Iron Man suit. Now, picking different reality Iron Man suits can be tricky because there's a lot, but I picked the one with the coolest name and the most intimidating design. It's the Sapien Deathmatch armor, and it looks like a transformer attempting to look like Iron Man. This suit is big and bulky, but also packs one heck of a punch thanks to all the armor, and it goes on to become a symbol of the Resistance. Last entry, and this one I wanted to let loose and have a little goblin fun. I'm giving Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, aka the guy with the hair that I want to see adapted in live action. You know what I'm talking about, it's those weird lines on his head that I've never quite understood. Anyways, Green Goblin has showcased a whole bevy of amazing villainous suits over the years, and I specifically wanted to give a special shout out to No Way Home and the new Multiverse Goblin costume. The first Spider-Man movie was later criticized for its goofy Green Goblin outfit, and No Way Home did the wise thing of letting Willem Dafoe play the Goblin with a rundown suit and no mask. Maybe this doesn't fall in line with the other suits on this list, but it's a powerful multiverse suit that allows the actor underneath it to shine, and I think that deserves special recognition.
I am Iron Man.
Tony Stark takes Moore's Law, the one that predicts that computing power will double every 2 years, and asks, what's the holdup, man? There are plenty of superheroes who are superheroes out of grit, determination, and skill. But mostly if you're not chosen to be the champion of a highly advanced alien race, hit with a special kind of radiation, or bitten by just the right thing, then your best bet is being a rich genius. No one makes more out of being a rich genius than Tony Stark. He's made so many upgrades in the comics that MCU Stark barely scratched the surface. Let's take a look at some of his best suits. Okay, I know what you're thinking. I thought you said strongest. You're gonna start with the one that turns into a Vespa? Yeah, well, it does all the regular Iron Man stuff like fly and shoot repulsors and fire the Unibeam too. Storing and deploying the suit has always been a factor until nanobots and symbiotes had the suit seemingly come out of nowhere. For a while there though, there was the famous briefcase suit. But why not make your suit into a neat little Italian scooter, popular with the mod crowd in the 1960s? Roman Holiday had a Vespa, and Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck fell in love in Roman Holiday, so Vespa. Alright. Around the mid-90s, people started seeing some strange behavior in Tony Stark. No, he didn't start wearing Jinko jeans or following Fish on tour. It was a standard old good guy embracing their dark side thing. And it wasn't the first time Tony Stark used his powers for evil, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. In this case, the heel turn came courtesy of manipulation by Immortus, one of Kang the Conqueror's many names. So naturally they found a younger, uncorrupted variant of Tony Stark from another universe and had him replace the corrupted one in 616. Anthony Stark, as he was most known, made his first suit out of found objects, found in the Avengers compound. When they needed those parts back, he developed the YT-1 armor that was actually a complicated sound barrier. The helmet would solidify the sound around him into a suit. How exactly does that work? Don't worry about it. Especially since the reality-bending Franklin Richards eventually just merged the young Tony Stark with a pre-Immortus influenced Tony. Franklin Richards, Marvel's reset button. Tony Stark has never really been one for subtlety. He does everything in a brash and showy way. He may have become a superhero, but he's not going to go for the brooding loner stuff that a lot of other people do. That said, he still knows that occasionally discretion is the better part of valor. To that end, he's built a handful of suits meant for sneaking about. The Mark 21 suit employed ceramic plating instead of metal and used a fiber optic network around the armor to make it appear invisible. For the Mark 43 stealth armor, he stepped up his game, employing actual light-bending technology and holograms to hide. It had a force field meant to resist the Mandarin spectral ring, a blast that affects things on the molecular level. It also had an Emperor's New Clothes mode that made it look like Tony wasn't wearing a suit at all. Tony Stark had another brush with his evil side in the early days of the New Avengers, where his teammates found Iron Man going just a little too far in bringing down bad guys. And this was a team with Wolverine on it, so, you know. It all turned out to be the machinations of Ho Yinsen's son, who was using Tony to get revenge for his father's death. Yinsen had a failsafe for his own life that was triggered when he's killed shortly after being discovered. The 5 Argonaut suits were activated, each with their own specialty. The Deep Sea suit attacked Namor, which was just never a good idea. A suit built for drilling made tracks for Saudi Arabian oil fields covered by stealth armor. A suit of battle armor was undone by parts from the digging armor. The real hang-up was the Hulkbuster armor that was fending off the Fantastic Four and Avengers until Tony realized the armors were tied to his subconscious. So he kind of shot himself, taking him out just long enough for the connection to break before his suit revived him.
I'm the best.
One of the advantages of being a virtuistic engineer with a nearly inexhaustible supply of money and resources is that you can create whole sets of highly advanced technology just to bring down one specific enemy, even enemies in disguise, which is to say, the Decepticons. The MCU and the Transformers will likely never meet on the big screen unless Disney buys up more production companies wholesale. The comics are a little easier, since Marvel was tapped to give the Transformers their story to promote the toy line. When Tony found the alien robots hiding out on Earth pretending to be fighter jets and things like that, he made himself a Decepticon-sized suit of armor. The big suit had a big hunger for power, but made do until Megatron lopped its head off, leaving Iron Man having to use his stock suit to finish the job. Perhaps one of the most tragic things about 2020 is that the number had just such a ring to it. So before we actually got to 2020, and it turned out to be just the worst, people started naming their stuff after the year. Now Maserati's new MC20 sports car just reminds us that it was released in a terrible year, and Arno Stark's 2020 armor sounds like it would just break down a lot, and perhaps do an awkward version of Imagine by John Lennon. Oh yeah, it turns out Tony Stark isn't an only child, and in 2020 his brother Arno was donning the suit for pay. The 2020 suit had increased EMP defenses, a controllable flying starblade, a handgun because why not, and multi-phase unibeam, and tractor beams with backup clamps that can magnetize what it's got a hold of. So that's fun. The gear-shaped agulets spin if someone gets close. Doesn't make them look less weird though. In the MCU, the battle for New York left a mark on Tony Stark. For the Marvel comic universe, beings from space attacking Earth or just using Earth to attack each other is kinda just a regular Tuesday. Somehow, our pale blue dot is a galactic hotspot. To that end, comic book Tony has a few suits that MCU Tony would have appreciated, the spacesuits. One spacesuit was built as just an extreme vacation after 8 months as the Mandarin's prisoner. The suit recycled everything, allowing Tony to live in it for weeks. He had more serious business when he ended up a Guardian of the Galaxy. The Mark 45 suit was followed around by an armory that contained any upgrade needed, like bigger guns or more speed or a specific weapon. It also allowed him to control the other suits of armor back on Earth. To prevent the whole stranded in space alone with Nebula problem, the suit had a warp drive and was able to reach Mach 10 when confined to regular Einsteinian rules. The reason Arno Stark was able to run around as a mercenary Iron Man was because the Friday AI had emergency stored Tony's consciousness on the 13th floor, a giant server at Stark Tower where the new stored Tony thought he was a copy, but nah, he was just the original. Because comics. Using E-Scrape, Tony's much cooler version of the metaverse, he constructed a suit of armor out of solid holograms that could be configured at will. His consciousness was able to travel with it to his newly restored body, where his virtual armor made short work of Arno's metal suit. Unable to convince Arno that the threat he was doing all of that bad stuff to prevent was in his head, the suit created a holographic bubble to contain him. A lot of Tony Stark's existence is running around and taking out things he created that turned out to be bad ideas. Trying to stamp down a return of the Extremis virus, Tony found himself having to face Baker's dozens of powered-up foes. Seriously, there were a lot of them. So he developed the heavy-duty armor. Offensively, it was packed with enough miniguns, lasers, and a flashlight. But a really good flashlight. It also employed a force field to give the armor a bit of a rest when it comes to taking damage. Tony had a more extreme solution to his Extremis problem by using Extremis naturally. It allowed him to have a form of under armor that stowed itself in his bones. When deployed, it would attach to the armor part, allowing him a great deal of control. This one had repulsors with a full form mode to take on multiple enemies. It even had a gravity grip mode just in case he wanted to get in on Spider-Man's wall crawling action. It would later get upgraded with a time travel device built off of the time platform because, again, comics. The MCU no longer has a Tony Stark, but they still have a James Rhodes in the War Machine armor, and soon Riri Williams will backwards engineer her own suit of Iron Man-esque armor. There's another potential Iron Man-style armorer who could make his presence known in the MCU, that being Kang the Conqueror's teenage self. When the all-conquering Kang showed up to his teenage self to try to impress his teen self with his adult self's accomplishments, instead, it horrified him, and he went back in time and suited up with his own version of the Iron Man armor as Iron Lad. It has the usual collection of gadgets, but adds a version of Kang's time chair that allows him to not only travel through time, but manipulate it as well. You know how big tech companies get stuck in this cycle where they're releasing basically just an upgraded version of whatever it is they make every 6 months to a year, so that when they really do make something substantially new, they have to give it a goofy name? Meet the Bleeding Edge armor. This armor operated similar to the nano armor we saw in Infinity War and Endgame, but instead of being stored in a chest plate, Stark carried the nanobits around with him, and the chest piece just powered the whole operation. The nanobots can, and did, take any form, including just looking like regular clothes, which was handy. Another day, another time Tony Stark became a bad guy. This time it was part of a grand realignment where the good guys became bad and the bad guys became good. Only bad guy version of Stark figured the whole thing out and took measures to not be switched back to a good guy. Instead, he'd move to San Francisco and get everyone hooked on Extremis 3.0 for $100 a day. Since he was full of bad ideas, he upped the ante on his suit being inside him by using symbiote biology. What could go wrong? That meant the entire suit can be controlled psionically, even if it's formed outside of Stark. It combines all the regular Iron Man stuff with symbiote stuff like tendrils and mind control, which just sounds horrible. By the time Stark got to the Mark 70, he was starting to stack his weird ideas together, like using symbiotes again. When creator of the symbiotes and all-around grumpy Gus Null came to Earth on Carnage's behest to take over the place, it ended up being an all-hands-on-deck kind of affair. Stark found himself in a matchmaker role looking for a symbiote to bond with an ailing Eddie Brock. He infected a symbiote dragon with Extremis 3.0, and since it didn't have the $100 a day to maintain it, the dragon wound up separated from the hive. Stark ended up keeping the symbiote as an extra weapon on the suit, able to tendril and break Null's bonds with other beings, which definitely came in handy. Villains tend to look at their heroic rivals and get stuck on a anything you can do, I can do better mentality. After Doctor Doom achieved his goal of ultimate power, and had it not turn out like he had thought it would, he decided to give doing good a try. This started off simply as just providing assistance to Iron Man before stepping into the role on behalf of an incapacitated Tony Stark. The armor started off as a massive upgrade since Riri Williams was able to duplicate his work just by knowing that it existed. Made up of several moving plates, it had the regular adaptability, including the ability to eject the user should they get injured and carry on the fight without them. After Civil War II saw Tony Stark on the injured reserve list, Doom took the model Prime armor and added a dose of his magical know-how, making it powerful technologically and magically as only Doom can really pull off. Civil War II found Tony Stark butting heads with Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. In the MCU or in the comics, Captain Marvel is not someone that you really want to take lightly, so Tony bulked up his model Prime suit with stronger defenses and more firepower, including shoulder-mounted repulsors and the ability to fire up to 12 missiles at once like some kind of anime mecha. They could use fins, but how cool does it look if all the missiles come out doing barrel rolls and corkscrews? It was the rare miscalculation on Stark's part because Danvers managed to overpower the armor and put Stark in a coma, opening the door for Doom to become the infamous Iron Man. Part of your role as the person whose superpower is a big old brain and a big bank account is to come up with a contingency plan for when your more powerful friends go bonkers. Seeing how often Tony Stark did a heel turn, you can understand his concern. For a time, Asgard was a thing that just kind of floated over the earth, providing shade for cities in Oklahoma and Eastern Europe, specifically Sokovia, where Norse worshippers had been killed. Thor, being a Norse god, didn't exactly take that well. Unable to talk him down, Stark juiced his armor with an Asgardian crystal. This crystal provided a significant power boost and allowed Stark to even stop Mjolnir mid-flight. That wouldn't be the only time that Stark got an Asgardian upgrade to his armor.
Power at 400% capacity.
How about that?
When the world-eating serpent came along to eat Midgard, Odin opened the Great Forges to Tony Stark to make some serpent-killing weapons out of Uru, the material that Mjolnir is made from. After creating a little arsenal, he took his bleeding edge armor and gave it a dose of Uru, giving it the properties of the powerful destroyer armor, dubbing it the Iron Destroyer. When the serpent was destroyed and Odin went home, he took his enchantments with him, so Stark had to flush the Uru and go back to just pure Earth tech. The Phoenix Force is one of those primary manifestations of destruction and creation of the multiverse, whose power and scope are confounding for us mere mortals. Without the long view, we tend to think things would generally be better off if it just went away, which was Stark's plan when he heard the Phoenix Force was headed to Earth. He wound up building a special Phoenix Killer armor with a beam supposedly powerful enough to destroy the Phoenix Force. Instead, he split it into 5 separate entities, resulting in the need to fight off 5 people juiced up on the primordial power. Oopsie doodle. It may not seem like it in the MCU, but in the comics, one of the most persistent and effective foes of the Avengers is the killer robot Ultron. Never defeated, so much as temporarily set back, just like Stark, he's constantly upgrading. It stands to reason then that Stark built an Ultron-specific set of armor that he finally got to use when he merged Hank Pym and Ultron, kidnapped the Wasp and Jocasta. He ended up on the wrong end of a beam that combined the biological with the chemical and had to abandon the fight in order to expel the newly motivated suit trying to merge with him. Look, there's nothing not to love about the Fin Fang Foom armor. First of all, 100% greater chance of Fin Fang Foom. Then the kaiju-sized armor starts out as 5 submersible autonomous repulsor cannons that attack their space dragon target immediately. Then they get all Megazord about it and form the Fin Fang Foom Buster after gathering around a cockpit module. It's just one sword descending out of the sky away from perfection. Unfortunately for Stark, it wasn't enough to stop old Foomer, as his friends like to call him. What might have helped is the magical upgrade he got from the Extremis armor. Fighting a different dragon, Sadorang, the armor got infected by a bit of the old hocus pocus and gave Iron Man some spellcasting slots while reverting the whole look back to a more medieval aesthetic. This Doctor Doom level power was a bit much, and Stark peeled himself out to go to a previous model to get the job done. If you ask Rocket, Tony Stark is just a genius on Earth. In space, there are all kinds of super advanced species and societies that look upon Stark's efforts as being kinda quaint. Using his Extrembiote, Stark was able to fire up a suit of Celestial armor after the Celestial fell. He tried to use it as a way to travel through space quickly, and he eventually had to adapt it to Hulk's stopping combat when the Hulk used it to cause damage. Without Banner's hand on the wheel, however, Hulk's rage eventually gave him the strength to dismantle the entire thing. Speaking of Celestials, Stark had built a Celestial-sized contingency plan for the Dark Celestials with his Godbuster armor, kept in a Dyson sphere just off Mars. The plan was to do at least enough damage to give the Dark Celestials pause, but what he hadn't counted on was the threat that the Horde presented when they showed up with the animated dead Celestials and infected the Godkiller armor, leading it to self-destruct. Free from biological restraints hanging out in the virtual space of the 13th floor and E-space, Tony was able to up the ante on design, especially not having to worry about putting a physical Tony inside it. He eventually found a way to have his design uploaded to a 3D printer and then use that massively powerful armor to take out Motherboard, who was draining people in E-space. It was a suit of armor so powerful we only know about it because of the way people reacted to it. Arno called it Tony's masterpiece, and Tony felt the best move was to end the armor and self-destruct it to keep it out of the real world.
They say the hero makes the suit and not the other way around. Well, in some instances, that's not always the case. With that being said, here are the 10 strongest suits that will be introduced in the MCU during Phase 5. If you've seen the trailers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, then you may have spotted Star-Lord and company rocking matching red and blue uniforms. These outfits are pulled straight from the comic book pages and are a callback to the team's attires before the rough and rugged ragtag look adopted from the MCU. Guardians of the Galaxy is all about family, which is also their greatest weapon, and perhaps the bond of sporting the same team colors will enhance that power greatly.
Ha! Thank you.
It's not half bad.
Although these suits are not inherently fortified, nor do they provide any extra artillery, they are being introduced for the first time during Phase 5. Daredevil is alive and well in the MCU, and the series aptly titled Born Again is slated for Phase 5, which will pick up not long after we last saw Matt Murdock wearing his red and yellow combat suit in She-Hulk. Normally wearing a nearly identical crimson suit, the rumor is that the Devil of Hell's Kitchen will don his mostly black Shadowland suit from the comics in the Born Again series. In fact, Mr. Matt Murdock may be forced to take things one step further and break out his Daredevil armor in order to combat the more heavy-hitting and genetically enhanced supers that he's been interacting with in the MCU. Okay, so this suit technically was introduced during Phase 4. However, it is abundantly clear that Okoye and the Midnight Angel armor will be prominent in the MCU moving forward. Furthermore, we have not seen the full extent of this Iron Man-like armor's capabilities. The Midnight Angels are a subgroup of Wakanda's Dora Milaje, with their distinct armor suits providing them with flight, blasters, and extra durability among other things. Of course, they are made of vibranium and are virtually indestructible as well. Speaking of Wakanda, Wakanda forever! Phase 4 ended with Shuri defeating Namor, taking on the mantle of Black Panther in the process. Unbeknownst to most Marvel fans, the Black Panther suit is actually called the Panther Habit, a vibranium-enhanced suit capable of absorbing kinetic energy, creating light shields, and sprouting razor-sharp claws. With each Panther seemingly getting their own unique design, Shuri's resembled a combination of both T'Challa's and Killmonger's suits. However, basically every time that we have seen a Black Panther in the MCU, they have been wearing a new suit, regardless of who's under the mask. I predict Shuri will be no different. Ghost has not been seen since Ant-Man and the Wasp and is finally returning during Phase 5 in the Thunderbolts movie, an MCU character majorly altered from her comic book counterpart, whom she is only aesthetically based off of. Ghost has uncontrollable intangibility, and her suit is strong enough to stabilize the painful power. In the comics, the Ghost character actually upgrades his suit numerous times, greatly increasing his powers. Perhaps during Thunderbolts, Ghost will be gifted a new suit that does the same, allowing her to better control her abilities. Sticking with Ant-Man characters, Cassie Lang is Scott Lang's daughter, who has seemingly realized her comic book potential, becoming Stinger in the upcoming Quantumania film. Sporting purple and black, Stinger is the name of another one of Dr. Hank Pym's suits, which are powered by Pym particles and are capable of entering the quantum realm. The Stinger suit permits size addition or reduction, and has essentially all of the same features as every Pym suit that came before it. The MCU is surely building towards a Young Avengers roster, and Cassie Lang will definitely be a prominent member of that team after Phase 5. Out with the old and in with the new. Steve Rogers is now an incredibly old man and has hung his war-torn uniform and big red booties up for good. Now, the former Falcon, Sam Wilson, has taken on the mantle of Captain America, and he'll be looking to spread his wings come Captain America New World Order in Phase 5. Although we did get a glimpse of the new clunky armor that kinda just looks like Falcon's old suit but with a patriotic paint job, Wilson will surely be fitted for a slimmer, more comic book accurate Cap suit during the Multiverse saga. Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, and Photon have a space-oriented adventure in store during the Marvel's film in Phase 5. Captain Marvel was seemingly teleported to Earth, while Ms. Marvel was seemingly teleported to space, all while Photon is presumably with Nick Fury on the Sword Base, which is located in space as well. Because of this, the all-new, all-female team of supers will definitely need new suits, similar to Carol Danvers that can harbor their unique powers, absorb and withstand energy blasts, as well as provide collapsible helmets for space travel. Riri Williams is a brilliant young scientist and, much like Tony Stark, is the inventor of a durable battle and flight suit. During Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Riri briefly showed off her makeshift Model 1 Ironheart armor before designing and wearing the Model 2 armor in order to help Shuri defeat Namor and the Telekineal. With an Ironheart series coming out in Phase 5, you can bet a billionaire's buck that Riri will refine and construct her greatest and most powerful iron suit to date, known as Ironheart's Model 3 armor. Kang the Conqueror is the big baddie of the Multiverse saga thus far, and will be making his first official MCU appearance, kicking off Phase 5 in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The futuristic, time-traveling, universe-hopping variant of Nathaniel Richards is a brilliant scientist and inventor with access to unfathomable technology and resources. Because of this, he has designed some of the universe's most dangerous weapons and protects himself wearing his nigh-indestructible Kang armor suit.
I own about 2 pairs of pants that I rotate every other day. This guy has a high-tech battle armor suit for every day of the year. He's Iron Man, folks. The suit is him and he is the suit.
Told you.
I see you're confused, since he nearly made it to triple digits in terms of the mark number of his suits. Yes, it's true, during Tony Stark's time in the MCU, he wore a wide array of various battle suits. each slightly different from the next. Whether it be the Mark 1 or the Mark 101, Tony loved to put a little flair into each of his special projects in order to save the world. Which were his best? Well, let's find out right now. There is something to be said for nostalgia and iconic status. And though this rust bucket may not look too pretty, it certainly got the job done. But I remember that, as Obadiah Stane and my friend Tim for some reason like to say, Tony built it in a cave with nothing but a box of scraps. Then you couple that with the fact that he had to trick the people actively watching him that he wasn't making a giant robot suit. Knowing all of that makes the Mark 1 a pretty impressive feat of engineering. Compared to later models, however, it doesn't even compare. Tony doesn't quite have the same mobility with the Mark 1 as he does with other suits. It is bullet resistant and has enough force behind it to knock down doors. It's complete with flamethrowers and a rocket-powered grenade that appears to be activated via lawnmower pull cord. Powered by the first ever successful miniaturized arc reactor, as Tony himself even said, the suit only had a couple minutes of juice in it. It's the element of surprise that really helps Tony escape the 10 rings. With any other model suit, it's likely Tony could have strolled out of there, twirling a cane all the while. The Mark 1 had one glorious flight in it, and Tony used it as his final push to escape after destroying all of his weapons that the 10 rings had acquired. The flight was more of a launch that ended with Tony crashing in the desert with the pieces of the Mark 1 falling from the sky around him. Though the suit would later serve as the inspiration for the Ironmonger armor,
Where do you think you're going?
this first design is all about what it would lead to after helping one of the world's greatest heroes become fully realized. Thanos could likely crush it into a hunky metal ball and take it bowling. Known as the prodigal son, I kinda hate the Mark 42 armor featured in Iron Man 3. It gets taken down by a freaking semi-truck for Pete's sake. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Hey, why don't you try getting hit by a semi-truck and see how many pieces you break into? I get it. But Tony has been able to survive being hit by moons, and a really angry green scientist in other versions of his armor. Iron Man 3 is all about who Tony is outside of the suit. He doesn't need a suit of armor to prove that he truly is Iron Man. He takes on bad guys through much of the film without even wearing a suit, and I think the joke of the Mark 42 is that it's probably Tony's worst design in a long time. It highlights Tony's ability as a hero though, because it shows what he can do creatively with such a piece of garbage. After implanting devices in his arms, Tony is able to call the suit to him piece by piece from anywhere in the world. He can also control the full suit while not in it.
they all made it.
He did do some incredible things with it, like save Pepper as well as a group of fallen government officials. But at the end of the day, the best thing this suit did was blow up. And even that didn't kill the main villain. The Mark 42 was what happens when Tony gets bored. And if he had other options at the time, I think it would be somewhere around his 41st choice.
You happy now?
The Mark II armor is certainly an improvement over the Mark I. It was definitely a giant leap closer to the look we are used to seeing. Lacking a paint job, this was Tony's first suit he was able to fly in. For the most part, the suit was just used as a prototype until the next version could be improved upon. This is how Tony discovered some issues. For example, try not to land on a multi-level structure, as you'll go crashing through the floors and destroy a priceless car. Secondly, don't fly too close to the moon, as that ice buildup is a real pain. Luckily, this knowledge wound up coming in handy when fighting Ironmonger later, but it nearly cost Tony his life on the first go-around. It should be noted that the Mark II is the suit that Rhodey stole from Tony's place in Iron Man 2, and eventually became the basis for the first War Machine armor. It's definitely a technological marvel, but its kinks and unreliability put it pretty low on a list of Tony Stark's first choices for a rowdy Saturday night. The Mark 46 armor featured in Civil War is definitely not one of Tony's best, but it's still a pretty cool piece of hardware. This is especially true in the way he puts it on. And no, I'm not talking about that little watch that turns into a glove for about 10 seconds. No, the Mark 46 armor has all the standard upgrades that the earlier models had. But it's so low on this list because how easy it's beaten. Essentially, a couple punches from two super soldiers really put this armor out of commission. Cap was essentially able to take away Tony's ability to fly, and easily took out his targeting system. At the end of the day, Bucky and Cap are two good fighters, but something tells me if this armor goes down that easily, it wouldn't stand much of a chance against some foes who pack just a little bit heavier of a punch. The Mark V armor is pretty cool, mostly because it is stored in a suitcase. Mark V was really the first time we saw Tony get creative with the way he puts on his suit. V had all the standard upgrades of suits before it, with slightly more convenience in a pinch. Overall, the armor looks cool and functions properly, but it's hard to deny that it was nearly destroyed by a shirtless Russian dude with a whip. Whiplash tore this armor apart, to the point where Tony's fingers were sticking out of the gauntlet. Usually, Tony is the one to have the drop on his enemies, but in this case, it seemed that Ivan Vanko was able to do a lot of damage to a very high-tech suit. Plus, seeing some of the other ways Tony developed to put his suit on, a suitcase really becomes not all that special. This is the Icon, baby. Hot Rod Red and Gold. After working out the kinks from the Mark II, Tony created this masterpiece capable of fighting the world's greatest terrorists, and a really jealous friend of his dad's. Now, this suit isn't perfect, as Stain is able to tear it apart, but it did improve things like the icing problem, which led to a turning point in the battle. It's got high-tech targeting systems and missiles capable of completely destroying fully loaded tanks. It took on 2 state-of-the-art fighter jets, and most importantly, it revealed Iron Man to the world. The Mark III will forever go down as one of the images that people think of when they think of the birth of the MCU, and for that it gets some style points. One of the only special things I or anyone knows about the Mark IV suit is that it has a filtration system for when Tony can't exactly find the nearest bathroom. The Mark IV outside of that is remarkably similar to the Mark III. It has very few updates and upgrades, and honestly gets its butt kicked by the Mark II. Granted, Rhodey operating the Mark II was how you say sober. And Tony in the Mark IV was how you say not. Besides his incredible aim, destroying champagne bottles and watermelons, I can't really think of a spectacular thing the suit has done. Maybe survive being launched into a fireplace, but even then, that's a stretch. There's not much that can really be said about this next suit. That's the Mark 47 armor featured in Spider-Man Homecoming. The only real action this suit saw was rescuing Spider-Man from drowning, and helping hold a ferry cut in half together. Now, it is equipped with several other rocket engines that helped fix the torn boat, but outside of that, we don't see the suit do a whole lot. Tony is able to remote pilot it from halfway around the world, which is definitely a cool feature.
Here.
And given its Mark number, I imagine it has some of the same upgrades as the suit seen prior. It certainly looks cool, and Tony makes quite an entrance surprising Peter, but overall I would say the suit is really nothing special. The final suit worn by Tony in Iron Man 2 is the Mark VI armor. This armor is famous for being the first one powered by the new and improved arc reactor. Tony's old reactor was giving him palladium poisoning, slowly killing him.
Trust me, I know I'm good at this stuff.
Leading to drunk tirades and ultimately dangerous behavior. Tony had to synthesize an entirely new element in an impressive amount of time that really made Jarvis shut up, which was then used as the core to an insanely powerful and non-poisonous arc reactor. Due to this new power source, the Mark VI could handle some great upgrades. It was no longer just completely torn apart by electrically charged whips, but instead, along with War Machine, took out an entire battalion of hammer drones. Perhaps the most impressive addition to the Mark VI is Tony's laser beam weapon. With a quick spin, Tony cuts everything in the circle around him in half. Granted, he can only use it once, but it essentially ended that part of the battle in an instant.
I think you should lead with that next time.
Lucky for Tony, the Mark VII armor has a pretty incredible ability to catch things. Unfortunately, he had to skip the spinning rims.
Then skip the spinning rims, we're on the clock.
This is the suit that caught Tony when Loki threw him off the top of Avengers Tower. He then proceeded to use it to fight the Chitauri in the Battle of New York. This suit showed an incredible amount of endurance and weapons that genuinely make it one of Tony's most impressive, even to this day. It is loaded with rockets that come out of just about every part of the suit. He used it to destroy a flying Leviathan from the inside. He took out incredible numbers of Chitauri, and ultimately used it to save New York. One of the most impressively surprising things about the suit is how long it was able to sustain Tony in space. It's likely that Marks 1 through 6 would have exploded immediately after entering the vacuum of space, but the Mark 7 kept one of the world's greatest heroes alive. This shows incredible quality in the construction of the suit. When Tony and the rest of the Avengers went to Africa to confront Ultron and the twins, he wore a little number called the Mark 43. This was the first suit Tony built after he blew up all of his others at the end of Iron Man 3. Nothing like showing your love in the form of destroying all your security just for a cool fireworks display. Needless to say, it has all the gadgets. The most impressive thing about this is how easily it takes out Ultron, or at least the shell of Ultron at the time. Unfortunately, this suit is most known as the suit Tony wore under an exponentially cooler suit. This one, however, still gets the job done. It's kind of understated how powerful the Mark 45 suit is. This is the suit Tony dons for the final confrontation with his biggest mistake in the form of Ultron. It's the classic case of your robot son losing it and dropping the country of Sokovia out of the sky. You know that old tale. But back to the suit. Sure, it flies, packs a punch, wrecks some anonymous robots, but this suit really displayed impressive levels of power. Using just the repulsor in his chest, Tony is able to superheat the entire core of the falling country. Following this, Thor was able to absolutely obliterate the makeshift meteor. Then, of course, the pieces began to fall on Tony himself. The fact that Tony survived this ordeal is a real testament to how strong the suit is. Granted, while the suit is cool, it definitely wasn't Tony's best invention in the Battle of Sokovia, given that Vision was just flying around phasing through everything and wrecking shop. Honestly, Vision kinda makes most of Tony's suits look like children's toys. It's hard to pick just one, so this entire entry goes to the fleet of suits known as the House Party Protocol. What do you get when you combine an insomniac genius billionaire playboy philanthropist and an acute paranoia for the incoming end of the world? You get just about the greatest collection of weaponized suits anyone could ask for.
Everybody needs a hobby.
This flying legion of Iron Men is composed of various models of suits, all with a unique touch to differentiate them from each other. Which is ironic, considering that they're all controlled simultaneously by Tony's sophisticated artificial intelligence Jarvis. You have Igor, a sturdy machine that was capable of stabilizing the entire falling oil rig. The Igor suit is so strong that during its introduction, fans actually thought it was the Hulkbuster. There's also special suits like Red Snapper and Heartbreaker, which tear apart extremist fighters like cotton candy. In total, there were probably somewhere between 30 and 40 suits on the battlefield at once. It really was a sight to see, and I know it was cathartic for Tony to blow them all up, but you have to think they could have been put to better use than that. The Mark 50 was the first nanotech designed suit that Tony invented and was first seen in Avengers Infinity War. This is an incredible technological marvel. Granted, it's one that Shuri and Black Panther were miles ahead of, but who's counting? This suit is made of nanotech that is all stored in a housing unit on Tony's chest. It can use the nanites to instantly form new weapons like blades, rocket-powered punching machines, and extra repulsors. Tony even survived a direct hit from a moon in the Mark 50.
You throw another moon at me.
The one drawback is that as the nanites get punched away from damage in fights, Tony has to repurpose them from other locations in order to cover his butt. We saw this lead to a near fatal mistake during his first fight with Thanos. After Thanos had taken off a good chunk of armor, Tony's midsection became exposed, and Thanos impaled him with his own blade. Besides that one weakness though, the suit is top of the line.
Nanotech, you like it?
Veronica, aka the Hulkbuster, is one of Tony's most impressive suits of armor. It's probably because the design of it was in part contributed by Dr. Banner, the man who it was specifically designed to fight against. The Hulkbuster armor is so cool that you can wear another normal suit of armor while operating inside of it. It takes several arc reactors, not just in the chest but in some of the joints as well, to power this behemoth of a preventative measure. The whole purpose of Veronica is to be able to subdue one of the most powerful monsters in the known universe, the Hulk. This guy was king of the freaking gladiators on an alien planet, for crying out loud. What's even more incredible is that this was actually achieved. In Age of Ultron, after the Scarlet Witch sent the Hulk on a rampage like no other, and took down most of the other Avengers, it was up to Tony to stop his friend Bruce from hurting anyone.
Stand down!
Now, I'm not going to say no one got hurt, but regardless, it's still impressive. The Hulkbuster is complete with insane strength and repulsor blasts much more effective than other suits. The best part is that as the Hulk tears away the suit piece by piece, it is followed by a floating first aid station that constantly replenishes it. This suit is so effective that it basically took the Hulk's place in the Battle of Wakanda when Bruce chose to pilot it. Avengers Endgame saw what I believe to be the most powerful version of the Iron Man suit. This saw the perfected version of the nanotech suit seen in Avengers Infinity War. I guess Tony did have 5 years to work out the kinks so as not to get stabbed again. It's unfortunate that it couldn't protect against Infinity Stone radiation, but I really doubt any of his suits could. Regardless, Tony was able to take on Thanos more successfully, and cleverly used the nanotechnology to steal the stones from him at the perfect time. He survives being buried in the Avengers compound, and manifests new weapons unlike anything we had seen before. It truly is the peak of Tony's inventing, and him passing on inside his best suit is really just poetic justice.
Iron Man.
The man without fear? More like the man with a closet full of style. Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, has been operating as a hero in Hell's Kitchen for quite some time now.
Yep, still breathing.
The longer someone serves as a comic book hero, the inevitable costume change always comes around. Whether it be his original suit or an armored death machine of the future, Daredevil has had quite a few looks over his long existence. There are also others who would go to take on the mantle, of course bringing their own flair to the look as well. Let's take a look at the best Daredevil suits right now. Daredevil has always had a somewhat religious background, and while he serves a higher god, he also believes himself to be a form of the devil, sending villains to the place they really belong. I mean, Daredevil, Hell's Kitchen. Sometimes it's a little on the nose.
Yeah, and I'm the devil of Hell's Kitchen.
However, during a dark turn, Daredevil really embraced the nature of demons, with a costume redesign in the Shadowland event. During this time, Daredevil became the leader of the Hand, the villainous ninja group that he's so frequently fought against. Matt Murdock fell under control of a demon known as the Beast, which used his body to take over Hell's Kitchen and turn it into a fortress. To represent this new dark turn for the Man Without Fear, a new costume was adopted as well. It was slick and all black with a bright red logo on the chest plate. It also featured bright red eyes, meaning should he stand in the shadows, one would think they are seeing the eyes of the devil staring at them from the darkness. It's certainly very intimidating and a cool take on the costume, but as always tends to happen, the hero Matt Murdock eventually came back and readopted his iconic look. Matthew Murdock is not the only person to hold the title of Daredevil, and when multiple realities and timelines exist, it's likely you'll find someone else who adopted the mantle. Much like Spider-Man, the year 2099 brought a high-tech upgraded hero to the comic page. The Daredevil moniker was taken over by Samuel Fisk, also known as Daredevil 2099. Samuel Fisk was actually the grandson of Daredevil villain the Kingpin, and when he decided to adopt the moniker of his grandfather's greatest enemy, he really did it with a futuristic style. His suit is incredibly high-tech, seemingly made entirely of metal, with a new helmet and gun holsters. This version of the Man Without Fear chose a much more violent path than his predecessor. You see, while Samuel had the heart of a hero, he did not necessarily have the skill set obtained by Matt Murdock. Sure, he had the use of his eyes, but lacked any sort of sixth sense that Matt seemed to have. This meant an armored suit with a much more violent punch was definitely necessary, and certainly would make his grandfather at least a little bit proud. All too often in comics, the allies of a hero eventually take on their mantle. Sam Wilson becomes Captain America, Jane Foster becomes Thor, and Elektra Natchios, a hero in her own right, takes on the mantle of Daredevil. Recently, in the comics, Daredevil severely injured a criminal after losing control of his emotions. Distraught with himself, Matt turned himself into the authorities, but kept his mask on so as to conceal his identity. In his absence, Elektra took on his identity to keep the city safe. She adopted her own version of the Daredevil costume, that she mixed with her usual fighting suit. It included the Daredevil logo and iconic horned helmet, but also Elektra's waving red fabric and bandaged wrists and knuckles. The altered suit better fit Elektra's fighting style, which is slightly different from Matt Murdock's, but allowed her to go forward as the protector of Hell's Kitchen, while Matt served what he believed was proper justice. If there's one thing Nick Fury is known for, it's recruiting a team of heroes to do the work he believes is good, whether his superiors agree or not.
Ooh, you kiss your mother with that mouth?
What he's less known for is outfitting that team with some stylish new gear. At one point, Nick Fury's antics led him into a secret war with Latveria, the home country of Dr. Doom. In order to fight the secret war, he recruited a team of heroes including Spider-Man, Luke Cage, Wolverine, Black Widow, Captain America, and of course the Man Without Fear, Daredevil.
Your army will crumble, and you will leave my city alone.
Given that this was a literal secret war, Fury needed to keep the operation covert, which meant that he gave out some new suits to his new team so as to keep their involvement somewhat secretive. Daredevil's newest look included a black suit with red highlights and a utility belt. Now I know what you're thinking, why not just wear his original all-black suit if he was to be moving in secret? Well, how on earth would we, the readers, know who each member of the team was? No, this is a very stylish suit that fans have been hoping to see reappear in comics at some point. It's affectionately been known as the Daredevil stealth suit, and if Matt Murdock changed his look as often as Iron Man, we probably would have seen this in live action already. While Daredevil's suit is certainly about style and striking fear into the hearts of villains, function is definitely an important thing to consider when designing your superhero costume. In the 90s, Matt Murdock went through a phase that fans don't necessarily remember fondly, but at the same time brought us a pretty crazy looking suit. During a violent run of comics, Matt Murdock came into contact with Silver Sable and her Wild Pack, which left him on the wrong side of a very violent beatdown. His original costume was left torn to pieces, along with his body. After a brief recovery period, Daredevil attempted to adapt and update his look. His suit took on a more gray tint with red highlights. The suit featured a gray helmet with glowing red eyes, but the most important new feature about the suit was its armor upgrades. All along his legs, knees, shoulders, and arms were serrated pieces of silver that offered an increased protection to the likes of violent beatdowns. Eventually, the classic costume went back to normal, as even the armored suit would get destroyed. It was a little too flashy for the likes of fans, but personally I think it looks pretty sweet. If there is one universe that seems famous for giving well-known heroes wild makeovers, it is that of the Mangaverse. Set on Earth 2301, this Matthew Murdock seems to have a similar backstory and power set to that of the Earth 616 version. However, his suit fits right in with the universe. It is completely robotic and very bulky. It's completely covered in red metal and comes equipped with his all-too-familiar billy club. It also adds a silver mask and horns onto the helmet, complete with what appear to be large goblin ears. It's definitely a wild take on the character. But trust me, take a quick look around the Mangaverse and Daredevil's outfit change almost seems normal at that point. Matt Murdock's father was Battling Jack Murdock, a famous boxer who was killed for not throwing a fight, eventually leading to his son wanting to be a hero. During the storyline known as Back in Black, Matt Murdock returns to his hero days with a new sweet costume. It was very reminiscent of his Shadowland outfit, only with a little bit more red to remind us who was in the suit. The color scheme was mainly black again with bright red eyes, only this suit referenced strongly to his father and his training days in the boxing ring himself. Traditional boxing wrappings, all in red, perhaps to signal the idea that they had successfully drawn blood from their opponents, were wrapped around his hands, giving him a much more gritty, street-level design. It's definitely an intimidating suit that nods to his humble beginnings. Everyone knows that being a hero is 90% mental. It's not enough to be able to beat up all of your enemies, but instead you have to get inside their mind and make them think they don't even have a chance.
You may be wondering why the red suit. Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed.
The way you do that is with a classic costume. No one knows who you are until you put on the mask. Not to mention, it's important to have a great brand image for when you sign all those cereal box deals. There is no more iconic look for Matt Murdock than his classic red suit. In many versions of the comics, it's just a skin-tight red suit that either has muscle pads or just shows off how jacked Matt Murdock truly is. Combined with his iconic billy club and horned helmet, with the eyes painted clear red, Daredevil is able to truly strike fear into the hearts of all the villains in Hell's Kitchen. This suit was adapted into live action, and may be one of the greatest comic-to-screen adaptations in recent memory. In the Marvel Netflix series, we saw Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock get an upgrade in his original black cat burglar suit, with a slightly armored red suit and helmet that served the same purpose it did in the comics for so many years. As far as suits go, he definitely has some stronger ones, and some cooler looking ones, but this one will go down in history as the iconic Daredevil look. And who knows, he's already showing up in the MCU, but if he follows Kingpin's trajectory, his next look could involve some kind of Hawaiian shirt. In a what-if offshoot of a Daredevil story, a man named Masahiro was trained by his mentor Stick in a Japanese land. His mentor wore an animal-like mask in traditional Japanese wear, and was eventually killed by the Hand. Swearing vengeance, Masahiro donned his former mentor's mask and used traditional samurai swords to become the Devil Who Dares. He often goes shirtless, wearing only pants, showing how unafraid he is of being struck by his enemies, while other times he wears traditional robes to honor his fallen master. It's definitely a different take on the character, but it's a Daredevil look that strikes fear into anyone who has it. There's a reason a hero's original look is not always the one that sticks around. Look at Iron Man or Captain America. Daredevil is no exception, but unless you're familiar with his history, you may not even recognize him as the man without fear in his original outfit. While eventually he took on an entirely red outfit, his first go back in 1964 was in a full yellow suit with red gloves, boots, and logo. Eventually it was quickly replaced, changing only the color scheme, but it did have the iconic horned mask and style that Daredevil would come to be known for. Let's just say it's a style choice most Daredevil fans choose to ignore, even though it is a memorable part of his history that has been readapted in certain issues. Many casual fans may forget at times that when Matt Murdock is not suited up and punching bad guys, you can find him in the courtroom defending the innocent. As a lawyer, Matt tries really hard to keep his hero life and work life separate. Well, at least from the public. He has on numerous occasions gone out and beaten up the guys he fails to convict in court. However, at one point in the comics, Daredevil's secret identity became known to the public. At one point, criminals learned of his identity and threatened to expose him, attempting to hold Matt hostage by blackmail. In order to get in front of this, Matt Murdock revealed himself, and along with it, a new incredible suit. Now, this may not be the type of suit you're thinking of. You know, the ones he wears at night stalking bad guys. But instead, he adopted a new suit that was way more appropriate for the courtroom. He began wearing an all-red three-piece suit with a black undershirt, completely embracing the fact that he is Daredevil. He wore red gloves and carried his cane around, holding it like a weapon instead of a blind man's cane. This was a suit he wore in the courtroom and out of it, when there was no need to hide who he really was. This is the Daredevil equivalent of the Hulk, bringing together the best of both worlds. One of Daredevil's most iconic looks is also his simplest. During his original run as the Man Without Fear, Daredevil took on a similar approach to heroing that most heroes do when they first start out. This was essentially what I call dressing in a form of sweatsuit and covering your face. Spider-Man did it with his red and blue sweatsuit, and Batman did as well during his first nights as the not-so-caped Crusader. Matthew Murdock had the same kind of idea, only his special power set and skills allowed him to make it that much better. Given that Matt Murdock does not need the use of his eyes, he was able to develop a black mask that covered the very important parts of his face that would cause him to be recognized. This plus an all-black outfit made him virtually invisible when fighting crime at night, and completely unrecognizable to all the villains he put the beat down on. Eventually, Daredevil would adopt his classic costume, but prior to that, his look struck fear in the hearts of the criminal underworld. We saw this suit adapted into live action during Marvel's Netflix series when Matt first became the Man Without Fear. It's an iconic look for sure, and it probably makes no difference to Matt, but his suits definitely got upgrades not only in function but in style as well. Still, you have to give some points to the humble beginnings of every hero, even if it looks like they're getting ready to rob a bank and not fight a crime syndicate. Whether he's bouncing from roof to roof or beating dozens of men up in stairways and hallways, the Man Without Fear certainly has an iconic and terrifying look. Which Daredevil suit do you think stacks up to be the greatest?
Do clothes make the man? And more importantly, can they stop you from being shot or killed? Hey, let's find out. Captain America has become one of the most iconic heroes in history. Throughout Cap's comic, small screen, and big screen history, he has worn a wide variety of suits which all serve him well in defending the nation. Sure, Versace and Ralph Lauren are great, probably, but if I'm given the choice, I'll take either someone with the last name Stark or a fashion designer from Wakanda, please. The Star-Spangled Hero has worn a variety of suits, each with new abilities, armor, or function. But without further ado, let's see which of Cap's suits you should take into battle, and which ones you should maybe leave hanging in the closet for a while.
Put on the suit. Let's go a few rounds.
I suppose when you become a Dr. Manhattan lookalike with a giant pair of angel wings, the functionality of your suit isn't necessarily the first thing on your mind. In the comic event known as Paradise X, Earth found itself without death. The Kree Mar-Vell then decided to make several heroes into what would be known as avenging hosts. These hosts would hold the responsibility of bringing new souls from the realm of the dead into paradise. Captain America was chosen for this honor. Given this new form along with his new title, Captain America chose for his uniform a single American flag wrapped around his body, most likely to make sure to keep things PG-13. While the ensemble and new angelic look of Captain America is certainly breathtaking to behold, it's not something I would recommend to anyone who is not gifted with angel wings. Basically, if you tried to wear this into battle, you would look like a kid in high school who had their gym clothes stolen, so they ran to the gymnasium and grabbed the flag off the wall to wrap around them and go look for their shorts.
I can explain this.
After Project Rebirth proved to be successful in transforming Steve Rogers into the world's first super soldier, Dr. Erskine was shot and killed, and so died any immediate hopes of reproducing the program. Unsatisfied with only one soldier, Colonel Phillips denied Steve a place amongst his ranks. It was at this point Steve became the propaganda machine known as the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan. In direct tribute to Cap's first comic book appearance, Steve was given a suit made of what appears to be Senator Brandt's grandmother's best knitting work, complete with the crocheted A on his forehead and wings on the side. Long story short, this suit is fantastic if you're trying to sell war bonds or knock out Adolf Hitler over 200 times, but it probably wouldn't be very useful in stopping a butter knife. The first time Steve Rogers abandoned the mantle of Captain America, he set himself on a personal quest with sewing needles in hand to create a new identity. Using his background as a comic book artist, Steve began to make his own costume and search for a new moniker. He settled with a black and yellow color scheme and the name Nomad in honor of his cutting loose from his past and becoming a man without a country. He created a very low-cut black suit made of all-weather fabric which serves almost no purpose. He even talked himself into adding a cape, citing the reason as, and I'm not kidding here, why not?
No capes.
His yellow boots and gloves came from normal retail outlets. In the end, the costume is not incredibly functional and is exactly what you would think a comic book nerd would create for himself if given some fabric and thread. In 1990, a forgotten gem was created. Matt Salinger donned the iconic shield and uniform in a film directed by Albert Pyun and went toe-to-toe with the Red Skull. Several liberties were taken with Cap's story, but he was still frozen in ice and awakened several years later to save the President of the United States.
Mr. President! Thanks.
But the big question here is, what on earth is he wearing? What appears to be a painted wetsuit, the costume provides little advantage in battle. It also appears to make it rather difficult for Steve to actually see. However, if I was to say anything, I would say that it seems to make him much more aerodynamic, which in turn would make him faster and quicker on his feet. To complete the ensemble is his deceptively powerful shield. While it may appear to be made out of a rubber frisbee one would throw for their dog to catch, it accomplishes several powerful feats in the film, including smashing through solid concrete. In 1979, Reb Brown picked up the shield as Steve Rogers in Captain America, the 1979 TV movie. Marking an insane alteration in his backstory, Steve's father was a 1940s government agent whose patriotism earned him the name Captain America. After his father's murder, Steve, working as a traveling artist, was in a severe accident. He was administered an experimental chemical known as the Flag Formula, which healed his injuries and turned him into an enhanced super soldier. The government gave him a suit based on his drawings, but it's quite obvious that they were just huge fans of Evel Knievel. His outfit consists of a red, white, and blue motorcycle suit, complete with a large 70s motorcycle helmet and goggles. He always wears it, like even when running after criminals. I mean, at least his head is protected? His outfit is completed with maybe the most pathetic excuse of a plastic see-through shield you've ever seen. After his USO tour led him to Azano, Steve learned of the capture of the 107th Infantry and his friend Bucky Barnes. This is where Steve's true character shone through. Against orders, Steve went on a mission with help from Peggy and Howard Stark to save his friend. His Sunday sweater of a uniform would need a bit of tweaking. Given the resources Steve had available to him, I would say he did a pretty good job. In what is a personal favorite look of Cap's, he added a combat leather jacket, pants, boots, and goggles. To complete the ensemble, he borrowed an A helmet from one of the Star-Spangled Singers and put his stage shield to good use, though it did dent a little easier than future versions. Hopefully that helmet actually functions properly and isn't just a plastic piece of stage equipment. During an Avengers story, the villainous Morgan Le Fay created a reality distortion wave that sent time backwards into a medieval setting. Several Avengers took on alternate medieval identities. Falcon became Blackbird, Hank Pym became Gigantus, and Steve Rogers became Yeoman America. Dressed in his still iconic red, white, and blue, Yeoman America donned a traditional suit of armor worn by medieval knights. He carried a sword and his still circular shield. As far as looks, the Cap outfit is awesome. As far as functionality, there is a reason the knight's suit of armor became obsolete. I'm sure it worked great in the world that Morgan put them in, as it would prove effective against your average sword. However, in any other setting, I imagine it would be difficult to move in and likely very ineffective against materials of the modern age, like vibranium and adamantium. When Captain America first appeared on the cover of a comic book in 1941, socking old Adolf on the jaw, his look became an instant classic that he would carry for years to come. We've come to learn that Steve's suit from the beginning was made of a chainmail-like substance around the chest, creating a protective material around vital areas and appearing as a fish scale-like image. The weaknesses in this suit revolved primarily around Steve's exposed neck. He also carried his first shield, which he would not upgrade until a few issues later. While this one possessed the capability to deflect bullets, it was not as useful offensively as his future design. After Cap took over as the leader of the Avengers, he was given a new and more heavily armored suit, again created by Tony Stark. After the events of Civil War, Cap left his shield behind and went on the run with Falcon, Wanda, and Black Widow still donning the same uniform. He tore the Avengers patches off the shoulders, as well as the white star in the center. Upon his reappearance in Avengers Infinity War, it was clear that the suit had seen some mileage, as parts of the chest were torn, revealing the chainmail-like substance underneath. He had abandoned his helmet and eventually completed the look with a pair of Wakandan vibranium gauntlet shields. So this outfit, while complete with weapons and armor, has still seen a lot of wear and tear and leaves Steve's head vulnerable. Captain America's final Avengers uniform was very similar to the one that came before it. 5 years after the world lost half of its people, Avengers like Black Widow and Captain America were doing their part in attempting to help people pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. When Scott Lang emerged from the quantum realm with a plan to reverse the damage done by Thanos 5 years earlier, it was time to suit up. His updated outfit, now reunited with his shield from Tony Stark, included the chainmail material on the outside of the outfit, unlike in the past where it was hidden underneath. This made the suit less susceptible to wear and tear damage and made Steve a much more intimidating presence. This would all be necessary as Steve would need it to fight Thanos during his assault on the Avengers facility. With input from Steve Rogers, after his daring rescue of the 107th Infantry, Howard Stark was tasked with upgrading Steve's look. This is where Steve donned his iconic round shield on the big screen, made of what Howard Stark believed to be all of the vibranium they had. As well, Steve was given a uniform, keeping with the Stars and Stripes aesthetic. This uniform was stacked with the best materials the Army had available at the time, including a bulletproof helmet, a carbon polymer flame-resistant jacket, paratrooper pants, and a utility belt complete with a gun holster. Steve was able to take down Hydra's multiple installations and even defeat the Red Skull himself while wearing this uniform, and wore it for 70 years while encased in ice. After Steve's retirement and Sam's initial refusal to take up the mantle, the government chose the perfect soldier, but not necessarily the best man to become the next Captain America. John Walker was a decorated US military veteran and a longtime Captain America fan. While he didn't quite live up to the role, and would even adopt a new one as the US agent, he still was given all the same fancy equipment. Walker's uniform was modeled in function after several of Steve's past uniforms, being resistant to knives and most gunshots. It was complete with a bulletproof helmet and a shoulder strap for carrying the iconic and what Walker would prove to be deadly shield. Maybe the biggest Captain America superfan ever, Agent Phil Coulson, had heavy input on the design worn by Captain America in the first Avengers film.
Son, just don't.
With the way things were going, people definitely needed a little old-fashioned, and Coulson and S.H.I.E.L.D. certainly delivered. Modeled after Howard Stark's original design, Cap's new suit was made with a high-tech blast-resistant stretch fabric that served as armor and helped him survive direct shots and explosions from Chitauri weapons. His new helmet was once again bulletproof, and his shield dug out of the ice with him completed the powerful ensemble. After his success in defeating Loki and the Chitauri with the Avengers, Cap signed on to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., Captain America the Winter Soldier, and was often placed on missions with their strike force. For missions like this, S.H.I.E.L.D. made Cap a new stealth suit which he wore on his mission to retake the captured Lemurian star. This suit was made specifically to serve as a Black Ops type stealth suit, and is reinforced with a Kevlar base. His shield colors were muted as well to help with the stealth-like nature these missions called for. This suit is so effective that Steve even chose it to wear when he traveled into space for the first time, expecting another confrontation with Thanos at the Garden. Tony is coming up quite a bit on this list. Granted, in his own words, he does make all the weapons and make everyone look cooler. In Avengers Age of Ultron, the Avengers truly come together as a fully fledged team, executing missions to take out Hydra and even throwing after parties to celebrate. Now fully backed by Tony Stark, with no interference from the defunct S.H.I.E.L.D., everyone received an upgrade. Cap's new uniform was designed to be similar to his stealth suit, but able to withstand stronger attacks, including repulsor blasts that Iron Man uses. It is also outfitted with a series of electromagnets that allow him to recall his shield from the ground.
You didn't finish!
Sometime in the future, Captain America would actually develop an illness from the super soldier serum, coursing through his veins that would actually leave Steve paralyzed. His longtime friend and ally, Tony Stark, was determined to find a way he could continue to fight evil. Tony made an armored exoskeleton suit that Steve would be able to control and would act in a way that would allow him to move again. Steve would have sensors implanted in his body, similar to the ones Tony used in Iron Man 3 to call the Mark 42 armor, that would allow the exoskeleton to move for him. One would think that this suit would be the most powerful, but Tony actually designed it to be on the whole non-lethal, keeping with Cap's motif at the time of not wanting to kill. His main weapons were beams that caused his victims severe vertigo, and magnetic gloves and missile protection that were mostly used for defensive purposes. Maybe Tony should have quit the hero game and just become a sort of superhero tailor.
No kicks!
Though this particular suit was quite the feat of genius. With the combination of Hank Pym's quantum discoveries, Tony Stark was able to outfit each of the Avengers with this unique time travel suit, allowing them to return to the past and collect the Infinity Stones. While the suit itself is not particularly effective in combat, and Steve and the other Avengers would even wear more effective suits underneath, the power to travel in time cannot be understated. Steve alone with this suit was able to acquire Pym particles, the Time Stone, and the Mind Stone. Thor was able to recover Mjolnir, and the Avengers were able to gather all of the Infinity Stones. The implications alone grant Steve an incredible power, which he also uses to live out his dream life with Peggy. In a distant alternate future, Steve Rogers V is a descendant of the original Captain America, and has adopted the totally original moniker of Commander America. In this What If issue, Commander America is a member of the Cosmic Avengers, and the story being explored is what would happen if the team went up against the Guardians of the Galaxy. Given that this takes place in the future, Commander America's suit is upgraded greatly. His outfit comes with a helmet that allows him to travel in space. Most importantly, and I cannot stress this, Commander America is rocking some shoulder pads, which I'm sure do a great job of, protecting his shoulders. Post-Civil War in the comics, Steve Rogers was actually killed. Unlike in the film, Steve actually willed the position and mantle of Captain America to his longtime best friend Bucky, despite his history as the Winter Soldier. Bucky actually had to take the shield from a shield helicarrier to learn that Steve had passed it on to him. With a request from the now executive director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Tony Stark, Bucky decided to adopt his new title and a new incredibly powerful suit. This suit is probably the most indestructible of any Captain America suit, as it is laced with an adamantium weave. This gives it a shiny metallic appearance, but is still very easy to move in. Complete with Cap's iconic shield, this incredibly durable outfit makes Bucky Barnes a very effective Captain America. After the battle with Thanos in Avengers Endgame, Steve Rogers was tasked with returning the Infinity Stones to the moments they were borrowed from. Instead of returning, Steve decided to live out his life in the past with his love, Peggy. He would return to officially retire as Captain America and pass the role on to an incredibly worthy successor, Sam Wilson. After a brief period, throughout the events of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Sam officially took on the role. With some help from Bucky, Sam was given a specially made Wakandan suit to serve as the symbol of the country. Modeled after his Exo 7 Falcon wings, his suit is a vibranium weave with vibranium wings. There is a special location for his shield on his back, allowing him to create a protective and impenetrable cocoon. It is likely that his wings create weapons similar to that of his normal Falcon wings, such as rocket launchers and machine guns. We all know that a helmet would make a lot of sense, but even without it, this is still one powerful fashion statement. When tasked with defending the nation, it is important to look the part. Which Cap suit do you think is the most powerful? And who would you want to make your Cap suit? Dibs on the Wakandans.